Live stream, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Angus Integrated Joint Board. I hope everybody's well. A special welcome to Councillor Meakin, who has been appointed to the IJB, and also to welcome Councillor Julie Bell in her new role as Vice Chair as well. I do intend to have a short break this afternoon, depending how we get on with the agenda. Finish at 4:30 as per the timetabled meeting. Thanks to all of the officers for preparation of the papers today. I know a lot of hard work goes into those, so thank you. We'll move on in the agenda, which is apologies. Do we have any apologies, Karen?
Apologies from Dr. Emma Fletcher today, Chair.
Great, thank you. And item 2 is declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? Nope. Okay, that's great. Thank you. We'll move on to item 3 in our agenda, which is appointments. So this paper outlines the new appointments to the board. Welcome again to Councillor Meakin, and look forward to working with Councillor Bell in her role as Vice Chair. You'll note in the recommendations these appointments, but also the NHS Tayside proxy members, who are Professor Graham Martin and also Donald McPherson. And also note in the recommendation that we need to appoint one voting Angus Council IJB member to join the. I don't want to put anybody in the spot, but do we have a volunteer for that just now? Oh, I can see a hand go up. Is that Councillor Meakin?
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Is that volunteering to join the audit committee? Yep.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Many thanks for that. That's very kind, and thank you for that. I think Sandy will probably be in touch in terms of an induction for that committee. So thank you. So are we?
Chair, sorry, it's Karen. Can I sorry for interrupting. Can I just check that there was no other nominations? The only other nominated person could have been Councillor Speed. So I just want to make that clear. That is it just Councillor Meakin that's putting his name forward?
I believe so.
Yeah, yep. That's fine. I'm more than happy for Councillor Meakin to take up that role.
Thanks, Councillor Speed, for confirming. Thank you.
Okay, so are we happy with all of the recommendations in that paper? Councillor Speed.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'm just wondering if I could perhaps come back to the board at some other time. I could look to seek a proxy who could stand in my place should I ever be unable to attend. I noticed that Councillor Bell and Councillor Meakin have appointed a proxy. Is that something that I can come back to you with at a later date?
Karen, would you have any further knowledge? I can't see why not, if the other two council members have proxies.
Yes, Councillor Speed, we can pick that up in a future report. If you can come back to me, then obviously if we can tie it in, if it's for the next meeting, then we can bring that forward.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay. So we're happy with the recommendations in that paper. Moving on now to item 4A, which is the minute of our meeting on the 20th of April. Thank you very much for that minute, Karen. You'll all have had a chance to look through that. Is everybody happy that that's a true record of the meeting?
Agreed.
Agreed. Perfect. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to item 4B now, which is the action points update. I see most of these are on target in either yellow or green, but I'll maybe hand over to Gail to take us through anything of particular note.
Yes, no, you're absolutely correct. The majority are either complete or on target, Chair. Again, from the 14th of December 2020, people will note in the red column and overdue column remains the mental health and wellbeing. The intention is that will come back in August with a financial framework at the moment not yet developed. And the other area that's overdue was item 8 there, and that was the Angus IJB Strategic Financial Plan update, and that's now on the agenda for October.
Okay, thanks very much, Gail. Do we have any questions, comments on that update? I see one hand up, but I'm not sure whose it is. Nope, it's gone down again now. Nope. So if we've got no questions or comments on that, we're all happy to note that update. Thank you. And we'll move on to item 4C in the agenda now, which is the minute of the Audit Committee of the 20th of April. And you'll all have had a chance again to look through this. Are we all happy to note this minute? Yep.
Noted.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on now in our agenda. You'll see that agenda item 5 is a deputation request, and this has been received from Mr. Graham Lockhart in relation to agenda item 6.
Chair, sorry, with item 4D for the special meeting minute. And I think Sandy had his hand up. I don't know if that's a legacy hand.
Apologies, I'm moving too fast. You're quite right. The minute 4D was the minute of the special meeting of the 4th end to Karen for that minute. Everybody happy that that's a true record of that meeting? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. I don't see any hands up, Karen. So I don't know if Sandy still wants to come in. Do you? Nope.
Yes, Chair. The minute of the Audit Committee, and it was just to let the IJB know that at this morning's Audit Committee, we agreed that Andrew Jack, who I think is on the call today, would be the chair of the Audit Committee going forward, given that Julie has stepped down as she's become the vice chair. So that, with Andrew coming into place and with George agreeing to join the Audit Committee, that will be us back to a full complement and an agreed chair going forward. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks very much for that update, Sandy. Okay, so we had dealt with item 4D, which was the minute of the special meeting. Now I think we can move on to item 5, which is the deputation request. So you'll note within the agenda that a deputation request has been received from Mr. Graham Lockhart in relation to agenda item 6. And some details of the deputation. So it's for the decide if this deputation is received. So our first job is to decide, are we happy to receive this deputation? If I'm thinking yes, but I would like, if anybody has got anything else, could they raise their hands or any other thoughts on that?
Happy to support Emma Jane. I'm happy with that.
Perfect. Gail?
Oh, I've lost my camera. Can you see me?
Yes, we can see you. You've got your hand up.
No, oh, thank you for that. I don't know what's going on with my camera here, but as long as you can hear me. Can you maybe clarify for the deputation?
Yep. So if we do agree to receive the deputation, then Mr. Lockhart will be invited to give his deputation, and I believe there's one other speaker as well, who is Sheila McIntosh. They will then give their deputation for a maximum of 10. Will be an opportunity then for members to ask questions. And I think it would be important just to remember that any member of the board may put a question to the deputation, but shouldn't express any opinion on the subject matter until the deputation has withdrawn from the meeting. So really no debate or discussion should take place until we reach the agenda item, which is obviously after that. Is that okay in terms of clarity for the process?
Yes, that's fine. It's about following the deputation, and any questions that I put that the chair would request the deputation to leave the meeting.
Yes.
That's good.
Chair, through yourself, I will now send an email to the deputation group for them to join the meeting.
I've just, if you just hang on a second, I've got Peter Drury with his hand up as well, Karen. I just want to take that one first.
Thank you, Emma Jane. Just a quick question. Can you confirm who the people speaking from the deputy? Well, you've clarified, I think, that it's 2 people, but it will be no more than 2.
That's correct. I've asked for clarification in advance. We have two named speakers, which are Mr. Graham Lockhart and Sheila McIntosh. They are able to bring up to, I guess, 8 others, but I believe there will be 5, but only 2 are permitted to speak for a maximum of 10 minutes.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, so if we're all happy with the decision to receive the deputation, we'll just give a minute for Karen to allow them to enter the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Has been sent, so hopefully it shouldn't take too long. Thank you. Chair, it's just also to note at this moment, I've got an email from her being held up, but she's planning on joining the meeting as soon as possible. Thank you. Chair, I've got Mr. Lockhart waiting in the lobby, but I've only got one guest at the moment, so I'll just admit them as they come in and just let you know. Chair, that's Mr. Lockhart admitted to the meeting. He should be in the meeting. I think he's probably on audio.
I'm at 60%.
Chair, that's Mr. Lockhart admitted to the meeting. He should be in the meeting. I think he's.
Yes, I can see him. Karen is here.
Sorry, I was just understanding there was an echo, but I wasn't sure how that was happening.
I can see him. Karen is here.
Yes, I'm here.
Sorry, I was just understanding there was an echo, but I wasn't sure how that was happening.
Yes, I'm here.
Sorry, I was just understanding there was an echo, but I wasn't sure.
Karen, it may be one. Is that the case? Karen, it may be one. Is that the case?
You're going to have to shut yours down, Hazel.
Mr. Lockhart, do you have the live stream running at the same time?
Oh, yes, sorry, apologies.
Mr. Lockhart, do you have the live stream running at the same time?
Yes. Oh, yes, sorry, apologies.
Do you have the live stream running at the same time?
So perhaps should Mr. Lockhart leave the live stream then and just keep on.
Chair, it should actually just be, he's in the meeting now. I think if he's closed down the live stream, that's obviously what's been causing the echoes, and thanks to my colleagues for flagging that up. I thought it was something at possibly my end.
Okay, that seems to have fixed it now anyway. Have we got every deputation that was due to join?
Not yet, Chair. We've only got Mr. Lockhart in the meeting.
So should we just leave another couple of minutes for the others to join them?
Possibly if we ask Mr. Lockhart. Mr. Lockhart, are you aware of any other issues that's been flagged up to yourself for the other attendees?
I think you're on mute.
What we'll do is we'll sort that out. I'll need to say that. Yeah. One of the attendees, unfortunately, I think maybe the lady who is coming later has had to go to A&E, unfortunately. so she will be around soon. We are in fact having a couple of issues here with our computers, but we are trying to rearrange it. If you can give us just a few seconds to get ourselves organised. Hopefully you may be able to see both myself and Sheila McIntosh now, and we will be presenting the deputation, if that's okay, in this format.
Chair, through yourself, just to confirm to Ms McIntosh and Mr Lockhart, if the other attendees, if they can't access the meeting, they can still continue watching it on the live stream, because obviously they are in attendance basically more as an observer rather than a speaker. So that's probably the best route rather than holding up the actual meeting at the moment.
Right. So are you okay to, sorry, I think you're back on mute now. Are you okay to, with the two of you being present in terms of the speakers for the deputation?
Yes, we're here, thank you. Yep.
Okay, so well, welcome to you both. I understand that you're both speaking today to the deputation, yourself, Mr Lockhart, and Sheila McIntosh. Just to remind you, you have 10 minutes to give your deputation. There'll then be an opportunity for the IJB members to ask any questions, and following those questions, I'll ask you to withdraw from the meeting, but you are welcome to rejoin using the live feed link for the following agenda item. So I'd like you now to invite you now to give your deputation. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity to put forward our case for the supported accommodation review. And we recommend that the board agrees to option 2, that's proceed with the current model of limited staff. The quality of life for all the residents at St Drostan's Court in Brechin is paramount, and option 2 gives the correct balance between care and finance. Susan, our daughter, who is 38 and has Down syndrome, and Nan, Sheila's mum, who's 94 and very alert, are a resident at St Drostan's. They are 2 excellent examples of all the folk with a wide range of ages and abilities who want to be independent. They need some extra help and support, but do not need constant care. They benefit from the on-site staff team giving them the extra help and support needed to be independent, and they enjoy an excellent quality of life without requiring constant care. Susan, our daughter, wanted to be independent, but she needs help with main meals and planned and unplanned medication. St Drostan's is ideal.
My mum had stairs at inside her house, plus 3 steps at the front and back doors, which she just couldn't manage independently. St Drostan's is great for her independence.
Fundamental to the care that they all receive are continuity, flexibility, and peace of mind. With continuity, the on-site staff team are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The same familiar faces are just a cord pull away any time of the day or night. Susan requires unplanned medication from time to time, and it can be any time, day or night. A familiar face is a cord pull away.
Mum sometimes has to get pain relief gel rubbed on her back if it's really bad, especially during the night. A familiar face makes all the difference to her.
With flexibility of care, Susan likes going to the cinema. And if she's not home for 6 p.m. for her meal and planned medication, the staff will come in when she's home to get her meal ready and give her the medication.
Mum sometimes gets help cutting her fingernails, putting in her earrings, and especially taking rubbish out on windy days when she fears falling. That flexibility of care is crucial for her.
And then peace of mind, knowing that Susan is a cord pull away from help and support at any time, day or night. Words cannot describe the peace of mind for Hazel and me.
I live in one of the Angus Glens, and if my mum lived with me, she would not have easy access to district nurses, health visitors, doctors, etc. Also, I have MS, and my mum tries and usually succeeds not to demand too much of me. None of us had foreseen the relief it would be when she moved to St Drostan's Court. But when we were snowed in last winter, I can tell you it was a great relief.
For all the residents, the on-site staff provide continuity, flexibility and peace of mind. St Drosslands Court has empty cottages, some vacant for months. Why? St Drosslands would be full and probably have a waiting list if more people knew about it. We've been living in Brechin for 16 years and Hazel and I found out about St Drosslands from our care manager 2 years ago. We did not know about it before then.
Despite living in Brechin for all of her 94 years and running a newsagent shop and being actively involved locally, Mum and I didn't know about St Drosslands Court and only found out about it through her shopper.
A number of the residents at St Drosslands receive personal care from private carers. When the private carers are not there, the on-site staff enhance their quality of life. With option 3, all the residents must have private carers. The quality of their lives will be diminished with the loss of care from on-site staff. Private care is at set times and time constrained. Out with the set times, there is no private care day or night. There is limited or no flexibility with private care, and unplanned private care during the day or night is not possible. If Susan is not at home for 6 p.m. and when she needs unplanned medication, it's not possible with a private care provider.
No care worker would come out to rub pain relief on Mum's. She would just have to suffer and lose sleep, and that's a pretty depressing situation for her and us.
I learned 2 weeks ago that a pilot model is to be introduced in St Drosslands instance for unplanned medication administration in the community. A pilot before the decision is made today, and that pilot indeed will not be a cord pull away, it will not be a familiar face, and what if it fails? A none for Susan, especially in the middle of the night, would not go down too well.
And it would be a real embarrassment for Mum if she could get someone to give her a pain relief gel.
A concierge-only service with private care providers and perhaps input from Community Alarm does not give peace of mind to residents and their families. Regular communication between the private carer and the concierge because of time restraints, a resident's health could. Continuity, flexibility and peace of mind are further compromised with the uncertain and retaining staff in the private sector. And critically, with option 3, there are the subtle changes to the quality of life of the residents. The majority of residents live on their own, and we all know that loneliness and social isolation issue today. The current on-site staff are the ones who can pick up these signs. With option 3, private care providers are time constrained, so can be limited in picking up the signs. With option 3, tea and toast every second Sunday morning, or coming to chat with the concierge at the reception, independently mobile. Social contact and social interaction will be limited for less mobile residents. The current on-site staff who would pick up signs of possible chest or urine infections will be limited in the care option 3. Having to wait who knows how long for unplanned medication will raise stress levels. Residents may try to administer the medication themselves or not ask for it in future. A resident may pull the cord, what for them is an emergency. With duty of care, what is an emergency for one condition may not be an emergency for another. Duty of care is a catch-all phrase, and it can lead to tension and disagreement amongst residents and their families. I had informed the board voting members previously of my concerns about the consultation process and its findings. And just 2 examples, the bald figures in the report, well, they do show that the second most popular choice is option 3, but there are no responses for option 3 from St Drosslands Court and only one from Provost Johnson Road. No details as to the makeup of any of the bald financial figures are given. It's impossible to make major change decisions from bald figures affecting the lives of tenants, families and staff. In Appendix 5 in the report direction, it states, approval from IJB received on 22nd of June 2022, and that's for the concierge model. To have the decision stated in black and white before today is presumptuous and very worrying. It raises a question, is it a done deal? And it's no wonder many people told us, you're wasting your time. We are not wasting our time. It's not a done deal. There is another option, the current model with limited staff. With budget restraints, the easy way to save money is to accept option 3, but option 3 diminishes the quality of life for the residents at St Drostan's. Finance cannot and must not. If option 2 is accepted, there will be areas of efficiency to address. There will be the cost to register the building with the Care Inspectorate, approximately £2,000. With creative thinking, it is possible to achieve the correct balance of care. I visited Kinloch Court in Carnoustie. It is lovely. But to compare Kinloch Court with St Drostan's Court is like comparing oranges with tangerines. A few similarities, not enough to make a major change decision. Option 2 is the right and only way forward for St Drostan's and perhaps for other centres around Angus. Susan, Nan and all the other residents there are some of the most vulnerable people in our society. The decision in the end is about the quality of life for vulnerable people in Angus. Thank you, and we're more than happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you very much to you both, and thank you for keeping to time as well. That was perfect in terms of timing. I'd like to open it up to any questions from the IJB members. Do we have any questions? Nope, I don't see any hands going up. Nope. Okay, well, thank you very much again to you both. You may now withdraw from the meeting, as I mentioned earlier, and thank you very much for your deputation to rejoin to watch on the live feed. Thank you both.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Karen, can you just clarify that's Mr. Lockhart and Sheila have left?
Yes, I'm just double checking, Chair. Yes, Chair, they've left the meeting.
Okay, and I think that given on the live feed if they wish to. Okay, we'll now move to agenda item 6, which is the supported accommodation review. And Gail, are you going to start off with this, or is it George?
George, I'll start off. Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, maybe just a couple of comments first of all about what the delegation said. I think some fair points in that presentation that I wouldn't take it. So about vacancies, older people are not generally seeking placements in these supported housing complexes, and I'm not quite sure why that is. My guess is it's about preferring to stay in their own homes with supports until that possible, and thereafter going to care homes. But what is clear is that the vacancies, much more now, are being taken on by people with disabilities, and that's quite an important fact to hang on to when we get further into the report. And I just would want to assure the delegation we don't consider anything to be a done deal until it's IJB, and everybody who knows our work and the number of reports we've taken to the IJB over the years, I hope will recognise that. So a bit about the report. It's a long report, but actually it's not in what it boils down to. But you'll see there are a number of tensions within the report, and the delegate. I'm just going to mention those first. So the first of those is individuality versus collective provision, and SDS is a factor in that, and it very much emphasises the individual nature of the work and individualising our approaches. And it makes it very difficult when we try to do anything collective. I've probably said that in the IGB before. It's not really well designed for a collective approach to things. The second of the tensions, I think, comes out of the consultation. The family have stated a preference to go with a full-time care provision or retain that. I clearly couldn't dispute that. And the staff have got a different view altogether, and that also comes across in the delegations. There's a tension between those two groups and what they think is the best way ahead. And I think finally, the last tension is about care model considerations versus financial ones, and Mr. Lockhart mentioned that. And, you know, we're conscious of that we have best value responsibilities and procedures and laws indeed about value for money and how we spend the public pound. So this has been leading on the engagement process, or having to pick their way through those tensions to come to a finishing point. A couple of things I would like to acknowledge. We came to a view, probably one, that the model wasn't sustainable if we couldn't get it to work financially. And I think, looking back, we should probably have done a public consultation before we came to that view. And I think that would be a fair criticism if people made that of us. We're probably just very used to working on that basis. If we can't get it to work financially, we've got a problem. And I guess a more fair approach would be to seek the IGB's view on that, because we subsidise some services more than we subsidise others, and we recognise sometimes it's important to do that. And I think that the second thing, the change in the balance of the type of residents that we have in the two complexes crept up on us a bit. I think if you look at the timing, that was because we were busy with COVID, and I think it'd be fair to say we didn't have our eyes on as well as we would normally. So, and that's a really important factor, because people with SDS who come into the complexes very often choose to retain their existing providers, and they don't want the on-site provision. They have good relationships with their existing providers, and that makes the model less viable because we have fewer people then using the on-site care provision. Even if we spotted that earlier in the process, we couldn't really have done very much about that, because of course folk with learning disabilities have a right to apply for the tenancies just the same as older people do. So that is kind of a demographic change that we just weren't alert to at the time. But as I say, it was right in the middle of COVID and we were doing other things. So I think where we're at now, as I say, the consultation speaks for itself. The change in the balance of types of tenants that we have is a big issue, and I've explained that. And the big issue for us is that that has rendered the model of 24-hour on-site support unworkable, or not financially viable. And you know, you could say, well, we should continue with that in any case. That is that we will have staff under-deployed, and staff will start to get fed up and they will leave the jobs, and we will be back here in 6 months or a year's time revisiting that, saying we now can't get it to work because we can't retain the staff on site. I think that is quite a big risk. I don't think there's probably anything else I want to pull out of the paper, other than perhaps to make reference to the financial table on page 34. I think that's the right page. I've got a printed version in front of me that I was annotating. It's at the top of that page under section 5, the financial implications. There is a presumption of £100,000 savings target against the options anyway, hence the option 1 reading as 24 and then 124,000. We're strongly committed to achieving our savings targets that are featured throughout the strategic financial plan, and they'll be in Sandy's financial report today as well. And if we don't take the best value options, we will need to find that money from somewhere else, and that'll put pressure on other services, of course. I'll just ask people to take that into consideration. Again, I do have Gillian Richmond here, the service leader who led the consultation. I don't know if there's anything Gillian might want to add to what I've said.
Just really a couple of things, if that's, George is absolutely right. There has been a change in the tenancies moving into both Provost Johnson Road and St Rawson's Court, and we did that pre-COVID. Previously, both properties were owned by ACCCT, and they were predominantly properties for older people. We had a number of voids. We couldn't fill the voids there. So when the properties moved over to housing a few years ago, we changed the protocol so that it did allow people under the age of 65 to move in. And we did that because we felt there was a need. First and foremost, we felt that there would be a benefit to older people as well, because it brings a kind of mix of tenancies, and we've seen that down at Kinloch Court, and it works really well, and in terms of kind of peer support. But what that did at St Rawson's Court, there's now a half and half split between older people and people under the age of 65. And at Provost Johnson Road, it's more. There are double the people tenants over the age of 65 than there are under 65. Than there are over 65. And what that's meant in real terms is that predominantly, and I'm talking very generally here, but people under the age of 65 tend to bring their own care packages with them because they prefer the same person to undertake their personal care as take them out on, social activities and things like that. So that's why we've seen this change happening, and we've got staffing who are completely underutilised on both sites. At St Rawson's Court, in the table, on table 3, which is now, it's slightly different. What we said was the number of care hours being delivered at St Rawson's Court were 20.25, that's now down to 15. So you can see that there, and at Provost Johnson Road, the situation now is that the on-site staff are not providing any personal care support. So that has changed as well. So the staff at Provost Johnson Road are completely providing a concierge model at the minute. They're not providing any planned care and support. Within the concierge model, so the recommendation that we are, for option 3, that is a 24-hour support. It will still be the majority will be the same staff that are still there, so there is that continuity of care. They will still be, a pull cord away, and they will still respond, and they will access help for the tenant as they require that. Some of that support will be from Community Alarm. It will depend what the person needs. Welfare checks will still continue under a concierge model, so there will still be that support available to tenants, and the concierge can continue to support activities. Mr. Lockhart touched on the medication pilot, and again, that was work that we were progressing anyway, because we do know within Angus that we have a model where currently the district nurses provide medication support, and it was always within our work plan to change that and progress that out to other service areas. So that was work that was already planned and in progress. I think George touched on it. This service, supported accommodation, has been pretty much under review for approximately 10 years. And that has had an impact on staff. They feel they're in a really kind of unstable working environment. I think that's shown in some of the feedback. I think certainly the staff at Provost Johnson Road, in their feedback, did say that they felt a move to option 3 to revert to concierge only was the right thing to do. You know, we want to stabilise Proof-It, and I agree with George. I think if we go with option 2, the risk is that we're back here in a year or a couple of years, because, you know, we will be looking at a situation where the number of care hours being provided is even less than what it is now. Through discussions with our district nurses, we know that there is capacity in the Brechin Montrose area to take on the medication support that's currently planned at St Rawson's Court. We haven't moved that across so far because we were obviously waiting on the outcome today, so we didn't want to preempt anything. But there is capacity there. There is a plan to move the unplanned medication support and that would include community alarms, so they could do that kind of ad hoc unplanned medication support. You know, so that's really all I wanted to add, but more than happy for any questions.
Okay, well, thanks very much to you both. I think my main question had been around, you know, how far were you down the road in terms of those alternative arrangements for medication administration, and you've actually talked about that just now, Gillian. So it sounds like you're quite far down that road, really, in terms of capacity being able or being available and putting those into place. So that was my main question, and I think you've provided some assurance around that. Open it up to questions. I see a hand up, but I'm not sure whose it is.
I think it's maybe me. Thanks, Chair. Gillian Henry. I suppose my question is that, and just a description that there are a lot of people who are choosing to bring their own care packages with them. Do we have an idea of how many hours per week that is? Do we know perhaps how many hours per week go into each of the 2 sites? And then that would perhaps let us see the proportion that are provided by the in-house staff as opposed to those that are brought in.
I don't have that that figure, but you know, all the figure that I can give you is that the staff hours per week that we provide, the on-site support at St Rawson's Court is 180 hours, and we're currently providing 15. At Provost Johnson Road, we've got 210 hours, and we're not providing any personal care. So all personal care requirements is being provided by the private sector, but I don't have the total figure of that. I'm sorry.
Okay, move on to Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, like Mr. Lockhart, my initial concerns were around things like the unplanned medication aspect, and I'm thinking about, you know, as a former carer of a parent myself, you know, when these things come up, it is an anxiety to get those addressed, but it certainly sounds as though, you know, you've pretty much got that covered. I'm thinking also back to when we had to take a decision around removing overnight support and putting in a tech solution to that. There were obviously some concerns, but my understanding is that has gone actually quite well. People have adapted well, and there have been no significant incidents, no incidents of any concern at all. So that for me addresses a personal safety perspective, because we want people to feel safe in their home environments, which is what this is. I am leading up to a question, honestly. I'm just covering off all the areas that have been buzzing around in my head. I hear what the staff are saying around, we just want that uncertainty over and done with. And I'm really keen to make sure that what we do put in place, perhaps make sure that staff have alternative posts, or the right people are in the right places. But one of the things that I think the staff have supported is addressing loneliness and isolation, and that's much harder to quantify, I think. And I wondered if there had been any discussions with the voluntary sector around that, being mindful, hugely mindful, that what we don't want to do is replace paid staff with volunteers. I think that's really important. So they're maybe not doing the same things, but that people's needs are being addressed perhaps in a different way, so that it ends up being a win-win situation, that people get that holistic support that they need in a way that doesn't diminish the staff role in our whole system. If you know what I'm trying to say there, Gillian, thanks.
Yeah.
Gillian,
Just,
do you want to come back?
yeah, if that's okay. Thank you. It was just really a couple of things. Has said, you know, one of the other things that we're looking at as part of the medication support is to look at medication reviews for people as well, you know, by the GPs, and that's to look at, could we change from a kind of a reactive to a proactive approach as well, you know, with some people's overnight needs, you know, so that has been looked at as well, and that's been factored in. But again, you know, we needed to have the third party representatives of tenants where that's appropriate involved in that, and we didn't want to do anything until we had a decision today to move that forward. The concierge would still provide 24-hour support. They would still be there overnight, even in option 3. And that is because we do acknowledge that people move into supported accommodation because they want that safety and security, which includes overnight. You know, so that would still continue. In terms of redeployment, there is currently one member of staff who would look to be redeployed if we were to move to the concierge model. Because you're absolutely right. One of the key elements to supported accommodation is the communal area and the accessibility of social activities, and that to combat social isolation. So there will still be, the on-site staff will still be able to support activities in the communal areas. They'll still be able to do one-to-one welfare checks on people, you know, and have a chat to people one-to-one. We have engaged with volunteers. We've had some volunteers, 3 volunteers actually, at Provost Johnson Road previously, who came in and did some carpet bowls and some activities in the communal lounge. We've also engaged with the Duke of Edinburgh, students who have from time to time come in and provided some support, and we are actively engaging with the long-term employed project at the minute to see if we can get any support there, just to provide that additionality, to be able to provide activities, you know, and that's more so that if the concierge is called away to answer, you know, somebody's buzzer, you know, because somebody's maybe housebound and has called, then, you know, there will still be somebody there who can provide those activities.
Okay, thank you. Chris Boyle.
Thanks, Emma-Jane. Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Just a few points to mixture of queries and questions, if I may. On page 34 of the report, it's sort of about risks in not proceeding. There's a line that says that it is demand will continue in future. We expect many younger adults to continue to choose private service provision rather than on-site staff. So I guess it's similar to the kind of care bed proposals, really, is that what's the evidence to suggest that that is indeed continuing or going to continue in the future? And Mr. Lockhart made a point too. He said in regard to his daughter that they weren't aware of the existence of St Johnstone's Court as an accommodation option until a couple of years ago. And Mr. Lockhart, if you watch, I hope I've quoted you correctly there. So it makes me wonder in terms of filling space in St Johnstone's Court, if people weren't aware of its existence, then it's not going to be considered as an option. And it clearly sounds that it is a viable and good and safe one. From the people that we heard from the deputation this afternoon. So that'd be my first point. The second ones are around staff. There's a comment that if staff were under deployed, that they might leave. Without wanting to sound overly repetitive, I've spoken on a number of occasions about the crisis in social care and recruitment and retention of staff. So I think it's a bigger picture than just potentially being under deployed. And as far as redeployment itself goes, I was going to ask a couple of questions about redeployment. Gillian, you touched on a couple of things. It says in the report that there will be very low numbers of staff, brackets less than 5, who may require redeployment. And I think, Gillian, if I caught you right, you said that was only 1 who would require redeployment. It also says as well, it's strongly desired that compulsory redundancies for staff are avoided. If it's strongly designed, it's only 1. Surely we've got an assurance that that is not going to end up in a compulsory redundancy situation for that individual. And my final comment would really be, again, it was referenced earlier on, staff at Provost Johnson Road, St Drossens Court, as has been rightly pointed out, have been the subject of review after review after review. And one of the comments I think George made was that if you don't do anything today, we might be back here in a year's time. Well, it's probably similar sentiments were said last time and the time before. We need some stability in this sector rather than keep revisiting all the time. And I really don't think there's any guarantee at all that we might not be back here in a year, dependent on the decisions that are made by the board, by the voting members of the board this afternoon. So that's really just wanted to capture the sort of staff view, but also as well about the availability and the knowledge of such good care provision. And for the record, as staff side rep as well, I submitted a response for Eunice and Angus, stating that the current model should indeed continue. And it's the same argument that we use for the closure of the care, is that we don't know what the future is going to look like. We've got excellent provision there. If it's marketed and it's told well, then those spaces will fill. There's only 3 and 2 vacancies at the time of the report being written. So it shows that it is a popular option and that the full service should indeed remain. But thanks for the time in listening.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Chris. I don't know, Gillian, do you want to respond to some of Chris's points there?
Yeah, I can do that, Chair. Thank you. I think it's what we've seen is a pattern of people under the age of 65 moving into both Provost Johnson Road and St Drossens Court and opting, and everybody has to have the choice through SDS about their care provider. That's law. It's in legislation. So people have to be offered that choice. And what we've seen is that up until now, and this has been consistent over the last few years, is that people are opting for their own options and bringing their own provider, and that gives them some flexibility and some control over their care and support package. So we can only think that can continue. That will continue. Private providers in working in both areas as well. So that if people are asking the care managers to organise their care and support, then that can be provided. This has been, we've constantly heard this, that people within Brechin and within Provost and within the Montrose area don't know of the existence of St Drossens Court and Provost Johnson Road. There is a protocol, and that protocol is it's a partnership between the partnership and our housing department. So the partnership staff, so the care manager staff for supported accommodation, and people have to have a need for that kind of environment, and that application goes into housing, and housing allocate on that basis of need. So care managers all know about both of the complexes. The home care assessors, our manager from supported accommodation frequently attends the team meetings so that if there are any new staff that are starting in the care management teams, you know, that they're, and, you know, and it's kept paramount in the minds of all care managers and home care assessors. You know, obviously they're very aware of the complexes, district nurses, GPs, AHPs, you know, anybody who's visiting, you know, is very aware. So we don't have a waiting list. We've got three voids currently at each complex, and we've had that's been a feature for years now. And I think, you know, George touched on it earlier. I think we do support people really well in their own homes, you know, and I think that's always, you know, if they can be supported in their own home, then that's what they would prefer. Only move to an alternative if their own home environment can't meet their outcomes. There will be, things have moved on a wee bit since the report was written. There would only be one member of staff who would require to be redeployed if the decision is to move to option 3, and I'm very confident that we would be able to redeploy that member of staff into a suitable alternative. The whole purpose of moving to option 3 is to stabilise and future-proof the model, and it's to prevent us having to go through yet another review in a short period of time. That we, you know, this model of concierge, we've, you know, that it's been in place at Kinloch Court and Carnoustie for a number of years. We know it works. There are no voids there. You know, the concierge and the private providers work really well together to meet the outcomes of the tenants there. And just really to touch on, said they are an excellent staff group on both sides, you know, and I think it's, you know, that's testament to what we heard in the deputisation, you know, and, you know, we would want to retain those staff. And I absolutely believe moving to option 3, we would be retaining the majority of the staff there, and they would be fully utilised.
Okay, thank you. Moving to Peter Burke now.
Thanks, Emma-Jane. I'm just looking at the respondents for the 3 different options, and what struck me was that not one resident or one carer or apparently one member of staff at St Drosten supports option 3. And it appears that all the support is from other people and nobody actually working or living or supporting those in St Drosten's. My concern is how we align with protecting the public pound, which I could understand, with person-centred planning, which we're obliged to provide, and also treating carers as equal partners in care, and that doesn't seem to be addressed.
Thanks, Peter. Gillian, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I think it's quite difficult in the findings, Peter, because some of the staff worked together to provide a response, so they weren't always individual responses that came in, but certainly, you know, from the staff group at Provost Johnson Road in particular, you know, they did. You know, it was quite stark, really, in their support for option 3, but that was a collective response rather than an individual. I think it's difficult, and I think George touched on that there are tensions, you know, and we certainly throughout the consultation, I, you know, went out and did surgeries within each of the complexes so that I was able to speak to tenants, families, really just to encourage their participation and kind of hear, you know, hear what they were saying, you know. So we did actively encourage participation in the consultation during those surgeries and during the individual meetings with all of the groups.
Thank you. Moving now to Sarah Dickey.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, George and Gillian, for your paper. I'm just thoughtful around the pilot arrangements that was spoken about by Mr. Lockhart, and just wondered if you could tell me a bit more about those, the timescales, and how a pilot is being done kind of after almost the papers come into the IJB, rather than the other way around, to inform the options? Thank you.
Yeah, the work plan has always been that we would progress medication support within Angus. I mean, I think up until now, medication support has always been by the district nurse, and it's always been within our work plan to progress that. So that work was already ongoing, pre-COVID. So it kind of predates the paper and, the recommendations. Obviously, that work was held up during COVID, so it has just recently restarted again. But part of that work is to work with our enablement and response team to progress that team to be able to provide medication support, including administration. And they are a 24-hour service. Community alarm response is included in that team. So that is part of the work plan. The work that's still to be done, there is to be guidance and an operational instruction has to be adapted for this. Then there will be training for staff, and then staff will complete their competencies. So in terms of the timescale, we're still a wee bit off that pilot starting. It won't be too far in the future, and hence the reason why we made the recommendation in the report that the start date, if the IJB decide to progress with option 3, the start date would not proceed, or it wouldn't start until alternative arrangements were in place for medication administration. And that was to take account of that.
Thank you.
Okay, and I think the last hand we've got up is Councillor Meakin.
Chair, Councillor Speed was first, I think, from the numbers on the side.
Apologies. Councillor Speed.
Are you sure? Yeah. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was really helpful hearing from the deputations from Mr. Lockhart and I think it was Sheila that spoke. I think it's always really valuable to hear from service users, from family members, those with lived experience. So that was really useful. But picking up, I think, on the points that Chris made in terms of a similar scenario, again, to previous reports where I don't feel there's perhaps enough evidence to suggest that this is the right move at this time. I think Elaine asked a really important question with regards to, do we know how many care hours altogether for the service users across the two settings, and that information being unknown, as well as perhaps how many hours of unmet care need there perhaps are as well, because we know that obviously during the pandemic there's been such a pressure on private providers and their capacity and their ability to provide care to service users at this time. So that concerns me, along with I guess older people and people with disabilities and the barriers to housing that they often experience. And I think it was Sheila that described how the difference in independence for her loved one, for her family member, was, remarkable in terms of being able to move into a barrier-free home. We know that there's an increase in demand and pressures on housing, and during the pandemic, there was a change in the way housing provided their services. So I guess, do we know whether older people and people with a disability are managing to successfully operate and navigate that housing system and are able to kind of perhaps choose to opt for St Drostan's and Provost Johnston? Has there been that discussion with housing? Is anyone able to confirm?
Yeah, the protocol sits out with the normal allocation, Councillor Speed, for housing. So the in terms of allocation to supported accommodation, it's based on an assessment of need by the care manager and the home care assessor. So they complete the assessment and they submit that into housing with a clear recommendation that, you know, this person's needs can be met within supported accommodation, and housing allocate on that basis. Now they can come back and ask questions, or, you know, or anything, you know, anything that they need, you know, if they need any clarification and things, but the main driver is based on the assessment of need by the care manager or the home care assessor. So they are actively working with any service users in the community, families, you know, who may have an accommodation need that could be met within supported accommodation. So it works slightly different than the allocation process in terms of mainstream housing. So, you know, so certainly during the pandemic, we were still able to progress if there was an emergency, you know, and a dire emergency, or you know, if people were unable to return to their own homes, then we were still able to allocate within the supported accommodation based on that.
Okay, and thank you, Chair. Just a follow-up, another question, if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, just with regards to the medication and the uncertainty around that at this stage. So am I kind of getting this right, that in theory the person, the staff member on site at both of these complexes could be raising that alarm to community alarm on behalf of the service user when they pull their cord?
Yeah.
They're not able to provide, whether it be the administering personal care, they then would have to alert the team, who then would come out and respond, where there would be a time delay. You know, there's already challenges there in terms of response times because of the demand on community alarm service. So they would, in theory, be having to pull that cord to have another set of staff come out to deliver and provide care that they're not able to do because of the model that is being proposed today. Would that be correct? So I'm just wondering if that's cost effective and if that's efficient, and ultimately, is that providing the quality of care that's needed at the right time?
I see George. George, I don't know if you wanted to come in on that final point of Councillor Speeds, or if it was an earlier point. Do you want to respond, or Gillian?
Yeah,
oh, you're on mute. Oh, you're not now.
Respond. I'm conscious this is a bit delicate, but gaining the impression that the medication responses are at the urgent end of intervention. They're not. They're at the lower end of intervention. I think it's quite important to say that. You know, these are not really emergency interventions. So probably important to say that. And I was wanting to go back to the other questions as well, Lewis. You said about folk with disabilities not necessarily, or elderly people not necessarily being able to navigate the system. Well, as in any other instance, if they don't have capacity to do that, it's their guardian's responsibility to ensure that they do that on their behalf. And that, you know, as Gillian said, the consultations have taken place with guardians and etc. So I don't really think that's an issue.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Meakin.
Thank you, Chair. Just some points of clarification. Gillian had mentioned earlier about double under 65s and over 65s. I think it was probably Johnson. But when I actually look at the report, it appears to be tenants, I think she said, yeah, double. Tenants under 65 years of age, 10. Tenants over 8. Has the figures changed since that, or am I getting... I will ask questions, by the way. I'm quite new, obviously, so expect questions from me.
Yeah, the picture's slightly changed since the report when Councillor Meakin, and that, you know, that happens, you know, things can change very quickly. So the current situation that we've got at PGR is that there are 5 people over the age of 65 and 11 people under the age of 65. So that's the current picture as of today.
Okay. Obviously, I'm only reading that because that's what I've got.
Yeah.
There was just looking at my notes here. Sorry. Yeah, I think it goes back to what Peter said earlier, or certainly it's similar. It was in page 31, the findings. And my reading of it is that you've got a source, and a respondent, and the respondent service user tenant. There appears to be none in St Drossans and none in Provost Johnson. Is that correct? That would be table 4, page 31.
Table 4. Yeah, I think that, you know, in table 4, there were no service users or tenants who provided a response. But some family members will be either legal guardians or power of attorneys, so they may well be providing a response on behalf of the tenant.
In addition to that one, at the bottom of the page 31, respondents who use the in-house service, personal care service, praised the quality of the care being received.
Mm-hmm.
But if there were no responses from service users, where did that come from?
Yeah, people were asked to make comments, but also some of that came within the open surgeries that we had. You know, that came through very, very clear, was the impact that the on-site staff did have on tenants and family members as well. You know, they really valued that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, and thanks very much to everybody for all of your questions. I think we've had a pretty frank and full discussion around this, and I think we've heard from a lot of people, had a lot of questions, a lot of information from both George and Gillian. George, I see your hand's still up. Is that Legacy and Councillor Speed as well?
Yep, that's Legacy, sorry.
And Councillor Meakin, I just want to check that everybody's said what they wanted to say. Yep. Legacy hand, yep, okay. Okay, so if everybody's had a chance to ask their questions, we'll move to the recommendations in the paper, which, you know, obviously, as we've talked about, are agreeing to progress with option 3. Now, I know we've heard some reticence from some of the IJB members, particularly regarding going ahead with a decision. But I'm also wary of the real need to stabilise things for the staff and to make a decision. And for me, my assurance was around that alternative arrangements being in place for medication, which I think we've heard quite a bit about. And so, you know, I do think that we should move to the recommendations in terms of number 3, which is progressing with option. Are we happy with that recommendation? The other 2 are to noting the content of the report and regard to the options appraisal and consultation responses. Number 3 is progressing to option 3. Are we happy with that? So, Councillor Speed.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say I would be more minded to taken into account the deputation and their request to remain with the status quo at this time would be my preferred option.
Do we have any other input from any of the other IJB, voting IJB members, I suppose, in terms of making the decision? I'll just check whose that hand is that's gone up.
That's mine, Emma Jane.
Okay, thank you. Peter?
Yes, Peter. Yeah, I'm more than happy to proceed to the decision. It's yet another difficult decision, which of course we have to make during very difficult times. And my fear is that we may be here again as the picture changes. It's already changed since the report has been provided to us, with with about a 25% reduction in care hours. And of course, bearing in mind review after review. That aside, the people themselves, and Susan, Graham's daughter, and Sheila's mum, and everyone else is of the utmost importance. But nobody likes change, and of course, I think that would reflect on the other Peter's comments about nobody potentially voting for it. Although I take that note. I had a list of questions for today, and I didn't ask them because they'd all been answered. And I had one question in particular around reassurance of the alternative provision. I don't think the papers gave me that reassurance, but I think the subsequent responses has. And I am more than happy to accept the recommendation for option 3, bearing in mind and being respectful of Graham's and Sheila's considerations, particularly around the familiar face. I've been slightly reassured about that, about support still being a pull card away. I've been slightly reassured by that too, and more than happy to support the recommendation on that basis.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Meakin?
Given the feedback we've had, I'm quite happy to proceed with the recommendation.
Thank you. And I think it's Councillor Bell.
Yeah, Peter pretty much covered everything I was going to say there. I know it's a difficult decision, and I really valued the deputation's contribution to that. But likewise, I think the questions that we've asked have certainly given me assurance that those issues have been taken into account. And I would like to ask if there's a possibility for an update on progress, so that we can just track what's been put in place to cover those concerns, and to get reassurance that everything is going. But I think on balance, I have comfort from the conversation today, and that's maybe something that we need to think about for future papers in terms of what goes in, because a lot of the qualitative information that has come out verbally has been really valuable. So that might have been more helpful to have in the paper to preempt all of that. But yeah, I'm happy to go ahead with that.
And Peter Drury.
Thank you very much, Jane. Yes, we've had a good quality discussion today, and in the light of all that, and because we're faced with a zero-sum game, so if we spend more money in one place, we've got to spend less in another place, I'm happy to support the recommendation.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that's all the hands. I'm just going to check. Yes, Gail.
Yeah, sorry, Jane, I was waiting till the end there. Yes, thank you all for your discussion on that, and I think you've asked some really, really relevant questions. I agree with Councillor Bell there. There's a lot of food for thought to ensure that members have that information to avoid having big lengthy debates like this at the time. I think there's definitely learning there. One of my own recommendations there is actually about proceeding with the test of change now. I would appreciate, Gillian, if we could move that forward, and like others would have asked, an update paper at a future meeting would be really helpful to let folk know how that's going.
Okay, thanks for that, Gail. So on the basis of that, we will go ahead with the recommendation 3, agree to progress with option 3, and then there's 3 further recommendations following that within the paper. You'll have seen them, and then I think we should add on that request for an update as to how it's progressing. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Gillian, and thank you, George, for all of your input to that paper as well. Okay, we will move on now to item 7, which is the review of standing orders. I don't know if have we got Lewis?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, Lewis.
Thanks, Emma Jane. So over the last few months, we've been working, Karen, Sandy Galen and I have been working on suggested improvements to the current standing orders. The guiding principles at the back of our mind in suggesting these were to improve the smooth running of the IGB and to bring the standing orders up to date. Aside from some minor technical improvements, the main changes I've highlighted in the report, I'll just go through them very quickly. It's to provide the chair with a mechanism for adjourning meetings. It integrates the more up-to-date model code of conduct from Standards Scotland. It removes the ability to submit reports by fax, requires deputation, application to be received at least 48 hours in advance of the meeting, provides that motions or amendments must be relevant, provides that motions or amendments must be made in writing no less than 48 hours in advance of the meeting, and allows the chair to hold a non-binding vote of non-voting members if that would, in their opinion, assist the voting members in making their decision. So the proposal is simply that the revised standing orders are adopted, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you very much, Lewis. I think that's very helpful paper. I do really, as the chair at the minute, I do really support the chair being able to hold a non-binding vote of non-voting members. If that would assist the voting members, certainly as a voting member, I would find that to be of assistance. But I'll open it up to questions from others. Councillor Speed.
Yep, thanks, Chair. Just was really seeking some clarity with regards to the deputation applications and any notice of motion or amendment and the 48 hours notice given. I just wondered what would happen in the scenario. Sometimes there's late reports come to IJB. So what would happen on those occasions?
On occasions where reports are after the deadline, then I suppose it would be a matter for the chair. I don't know if anyone else who was involved in revising the standing orders has anything further to say on that. Karen, perhaps.
Whatever else to say, I think obviously, sorry, the late reports, there has been one or two of late that could have brought forward a deputation. But I think it would be a situation we would need to deal with at that particular point. But I think the moral of the story is that we probably need to just make sure that we guide ourselves and stay with the timelines in terms of publishing papers and issuing papers to members, so they do have adequate provision and capacity to look at the papers in advance to be able to be compliant with the standing orders.
Okay.
That answers Councillor Speed, but obviously it's a difficult situation, and obviously we would have to look at that if we did find ourselves in a position in future where we did have a late report and anything else that was obviously to come forward, whether it be a motion or a deputation. But at this particular time, it's not something that we've actually dealt with as at today's date, technically.
Okay, thank you. And just a follow-up query with regards to bringing a motion or amendment, and it states about it having to have financial accuracy. So just kind of a little bit of a description as to what that would mean. I know in council, when there's a motion or an amendment brought, it has to show financial, it has to be competent. So yeah, just a little bit of an explanation on that, please, would be helpful.
Lewis, do you want me to respond, or do you?
Can you tell me which part you're looking at?
Yeah, I'll just scroll down. Sorry, bear with me. It's under motions and amendments.
Is it 15.10 maybe?
Yeah, 15 and then
16.1.
It states financial accuracy is the words used. I think that's what Lois is wanting a bit more clarity around.
That's it, thank you.
Possibly while Lewis is actually having a look at that, Councillor Speed, just to actually clarify, in terms of any motions or amendments, it probably would be just as a process, if any member was to bring forward a motion or amendment in terms of any of the reports before them, the papers are sent out a week in advance of the meeting. So I would say that I would probably prompt any member who's proposing to bring forward a motion amendment to share, you know, have that conversation with myself so that we can actually then guide you in terms of that, so that we can obviously look at that and obviously highlight that too, and, you know, check it for accuracy, etc. And then obviously to save any issues 48 hours in advance of the meeting. So early communication would probably be most beneficial.
Okay, thank you.
Lewis.
With regard to financial accuracy, I'm not entirely sure, actually. There was a working group, and I can't recall which one of us suggested putting that in. I would have guessed Sandy, but I'm not sure.
Okay, well, I think Karen's answered that one anyway in terms of an early conversation.
Sandy has his hand up, Imogen.
Okay, Sandy, do you want to come in?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I think I remember exactly how this kind of came about, but I mean, I would view Councillor Speed, that phrase of financial accuracy alongside the other 2 or 3 things before that in the sentence. So if the clerk has reviewed the submission in terms of, you know, standing orders and code of conduct, you know, at some point we're just going to say, is whatever is being said in that you know, amendment or motion, is it financially accurate? Now, a lot of things won't have a number or whatever in them, and maybe there's limited financial accuracy to be checked. But if a motion did say, you know, we're proposing X costs this and Y will save that or whatever, it would just be a case of perhaps checking that with the finance function and the IJB and saying, if that's been put forward as a proposed motion, can we check that in the window of time that we have for financial accuracy? So certainly, you know, I would imagine if, you know, the clerk is checking the likes of standing orders and code of conduct, we would check a financial accuracy component through the finance team and the IJB.
Councillor Meakin.
Yeah, just a very quick question. It's regarding to the 40 hours in advance. Sorry, working hours. I suppose the issue is whose working hours. People work different working hours. I think somewhere else it says about doesn't include bank holidays and so on. So someone will want to say a deputation would have to say, well, are there any weekends in between, which is fair enough. Are there any public holidays in between? And what is 48 working hours?
So when there's a defined term in something like this, we would say, for example, working hours means those hours worked by Angus Council, just as an example. Where it's silent on that, you would just take the ordinary meaning of it. So it would be Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, but I think I can see where the problem might be if, for example, there was a holiday that Angus Council takes, but NHS Tayside doesn't. So yeah, that's a good point that probably requires to be looked at.
Thank you.
Okay, Gail.
It was really in response to Councillor Speed's original question about the deputation and late papers. So you're absolutely right. We need to apply rigour ourselves here to prevent that from having to happen. So we know just due to pandemic and other challenges that we've slipped up as well. So absolutely, we need to try and do better to avoid that. And if we're unable to do that, we would need to let people know.
Okay, thanks for that, Gail. Well, if there's no other questions, I think obviously the recommendation is that we adopt the attached revised standing orders. I think just being...
Could I just come in one last point? Somebody has very kindly pointed out to me that the reference at 4.5, which says refer to standing order 10, should actually be refer to standing order 8. So we would probably look to make that as a small technical change.
and also to consider the wording around the working hours as well, as was highlighted by Councillor Meakin. Yep. So are we happy to adopt the revised standing orders, bearing in mind that the two comments that Lewis has identified? Yep. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much, Lewis. Move now to item 8. We'll take this item and then I propose we have a short break after that, because we've all been sitting for a while now. So item 8 is our strategic planning update. Passing over to George for this one.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Everybody will be familiar with this format by now, perhaps except Councillor Meakin, so I'll do a wee quick explanation. Usually about every second or third IGB, we provide a strategic planning update, and it's a rapid run through most of our change programmes that come under the Angus Care model. I tend to pen it with contributions from the other heads of service, so I'll kick off a rattle through it, but I'll ask Eunice and Jill to come in on their particular bits as well. So, usual caveat in the second paragraph under background that, we're running a bit behind because of COVID-19 disrupting some of the plans, but we are catching up on that. And, unless we get another outbreak in the autumn, we hope to make good progress now. First up then, I usually divide this into strategic planning issues and then more operational things, but they all apply to change programmes that we have on the go. So the strategic commissioning plan, everybody knows we're working on a new version of that. Vivian Davidson led on that work. Everybody knows she's now retired, and Sally Wilson is taking on some of that activity now. Sally and I met the other day to have an update on the work. I'll rattle through that. We're thinking that the new strategic plan will be of 3 years duration. We were just having another look at the strategic needs assessment. We've said in there that it was completed in the sense that we've got all the LIG profiles and so on. That is completed, but we'll just check that over to see if there's anything else we need to put in. We're conscious that we need to have an annual delivery plan, which we've not been great at producing. We want to remedy that. The findings from the internal audit discussions that went to SPG on the 30th of March will incorporate the points in that audit made. Sally and I worked out the bones of an engagement and consultation plan when we met the other day, and that'll be a phased and stepped process. We would include in that, we think, a special session of the IGB to discuss the new draft strategic plan in December, probably, by the time we work through to that point. And then we will need to have a version in for approval to the Scottish Government by the end of March. So we're thinking probably a second look at that through the IGB or a final approval of it. But I think we're going to be out of sync in terms of our meetings. So just flag up now that we might request a special IGB to look at that maybe in March. And I think it would probably merit that, Chair, because that's such a significant thing for us, isn't it? The strategic plan that we lay out for the future. We're putting some more resource into this work. We're recruiting currently to strengthen the improvement and development team. We'll take on some of that work. Emphasis on early intervention and prevention we've spoken about before. We'll do a new market facilitation statement. The landscape has changed a bit. We've described some of that in earlier items, but particularly the movement from care homes to care at home and the challenges around that. And we'll need to improve our coverage of equalities and Fairer Scotland duties. So we're going to build all of that in. So work in progress for that. I've summarised some of the work around prevention and early intervention that's ongoing. I'll not go into too much detail in that in the interest of time, but we're taking a progress report to the next meeting of the SPG on the 1st of June. The integration scheme, I'm not bang up to date with that since Vivian has retired but is doing a day a week working in this. She doesn't report to me, but I believe that the scheme went to the Policy and Resources Committee of Angus Council yesterday. Gail maybe knows what happened, I don't. Gail?
Yes, I do. The scheme was approved at Policy and Resources, the Angus scheme. Myself, the chair and the vice chair were at a meeting with the Mental Health Oversight Group this morning though, and there are a couple of amendments that I need to speak to Angus Council Chief Executive about.
Okay, thanks Gail. The strategic financial plan was agreed in April. And you could say in summary, as I've said here, the financial position is positive this year, a bit artificially so because of the COVID monies and Scottish Government financial support to particular services. So it does feel a bit artificially inflated. Sandy's plan on the agenda further down, so we'll hear about that. Workforce planning is on the agenda later. The physical and disability improvement plans, so they were agreed at the February IGB, and they're just constant activity for the people involved. Members will have seen the Coming Home implementation briefing. We put a lot of detail into that, and the next step will be Asian Group progressing that. I think that probably merits a future full report coming back into GB, but we'll do a bit of work before we bring that. Kick-off date isn't until into 2023, so we've got a wee bit of time. But that is big business for us and will be really quite demanding of our resources and capacity, as you will have gathered from the briefing note. It also links in with the work on delayed discharge, and there's been a renewed focus on learning disability cases that are delayed long-term in hospitals. So we'll cover some of that work. The care home review, the work on the Gables replacement is continuing. It's moving now to, if you like, more concrete options for examination. One of the things that's coming out of that work is that there is quite a strongly evidenced need for a long-term residential care facility, projecting the demand within that particular client group. Staying with the care home review, Beach Hill House. Deployment of the staff has been very successful. All of the staff who wish to be redeployed have. There's a paper coming to our executive team. Oh no, we've considered it already. We have seen it. And that was a pretty positive story, pretty confident that we would manage to redeploy all the staff, and we have done that wherever you wish to be redeployed. The peripatetic nursing and care homes project, that work was pretty heavily stalled in COVID, but a resource has been identified to recommence that work, and recruitment process to give that some additionality is underway. The next item is psychiatry of old age. Eunice, do you want to chip in on that one?
Thanks, George. Thanks, George. I don't think I have anything to add to what is report. Members have had a briefing about a business continuity plan that is currently in force for the wards, and if necessary, that will come back for full discussion at the IGB in due course. Thank you.
Thanks, Eunice. Daycare review's ongoing. There's a board coming up fairly soon to review progress, steering group that operates underneath it and reports into the board. And you can see in the bottom of 3.8 the main areas of work there, as I've reported previously. Supported housing, we've just done the report on. Care management review at 3.10, quite an important area of business for us. It's progressing in a satisfactory way. There's good engagement from staff and stakeholders. And we're looking at the moment on case supervision arrangements and skills development, staff induction and improvement work in adult protection. We're doing a lot of work in our charging processes, and that goes right from the start, where care managers are carrying out assessments and putting costed packages of care onto the system. We're not always getting that right. There's some skills work needed to be done with the staff there. We need to review our operational instructions to support that, and thereafter we're also reviewing the whole processes that go with the charging and contribution system. Fair cost of care at 311, the Help to Live at Home programme. That's the approval of providers on the framework and the rate at which independent providers of care at home are commissioned and paid. That's all being revised and renewed, and thanks to Pauline Reid in particular, who's working on that. There are some really challenging areas. Lois mentioned earlier the issues about being able to provide enough care at home. And the fair cost of care review won't entirely solve that, but it will take us a bit of the way further towards addressing some of those problems. And also, we think there's an issue around quality in some of the provision in complex care, which we intend to tackle through the framework review. The next one is the Homeless Supported Accommodation Review. I'll just ask Jill Galloway if she wants to add anything to that section of the report. Jill, anything from you?
Yeah, thanks, George. Just in relation to the urgent care side of things, it's a really exciting time. At the moment around urgent care, there was a national relaunch of urgent and unscheduled care programme of works just on the 1st of June. That has expanded from what has traditionally been progressed through unscheduled care to include urgent care, that it's expanded into primary and community care settings. So a really exciting time. There's 8 high impact changes. We've completed a self-assessment as a board to identify the high impact changes, and as per the report, Dr. Scott Jamieson has done a discovery piece of work around the provision of urgent care within primary and community care settings. So we need to do further work around that, and we are going to do a piece of work specifically for Angus. But the idea is that we take a regional approach around this with some local tweaks to meet the needs of the local populations in each of the partnership areas to progress the provision of urgent care, linking it to the GMS 2018 contract as well. So really exciting time, and happy to bring an update back around that. It is a very big piece of work.
Thanks, Jill. You've jumped ahead a page, but that's absolutely fine. Did you want to say anything about the... No worries. Well, I was going to ask you for that, but anyway. Do you have anything around the Homeless Supported Accommodation Review? I will just add that there's a report coming to the SPG.
SPG.
On 1st of July. Is there anything else you wanted to add on that?
Nope. Nothing else to add on that, George. Thank you.
Thank you. The next one, 313, is a redesign of the stroke rehab pathway. Eunice, do you want to add anything? There's quite a lot of detail in the report on this section. But anything to add to that?
No, thanks, George.
No, okay.
And an IDP probably coming in August. Thank you.
Okay. And the next one's yours as well, Eunice. Medicine for the Elderly, MFE inpatient review.
Members will be aware that we are out at public engagement just now at our inpatient bed review, and other than that we'll be bringing a paper in August to IGB. Thank you.
Thanks, Eunice. I'll jump on to financial implications. So we've said earlier on that a number of the projects are behind their original schedules, and some are at risk of not delivering the savings that were identified with some of them. That will put an increased burden on the IGB's financial plan. And Sandy will talk to that, I'm sure, when he gets to the financial report. And that, there may be some gaps that we need to find other ways to fill as a result of that. A brief bit about risk. I think these are now beginning to get momentum again in the post-COVID world, but there are some risks. A further COVID-19 outbreak would be an obvious one. Capacity amongst staff. Some of the change programs are pretty resource intensive. They need a combination usually of planners and operational managers to drive them forward, plus folk from comms and procurement, etc. as well. So there are pressures around just now with the operational teams. So there's been a significant increase in adult protection and adult with incapacity work, and these are often the same people that are doing that operational work as are contributing towards the change programs. But it's manageable, but that can change. Planned savings measures risk I've mentioned. I think getting capacity sometimes from corporate services is challenging, and particularly around procurement, finance, and HR, because nearly all the change programs have got elements of those in them. The whole risk around care at home I've mentioned, and staff shortages caused by recruitment and retention issues is also a risk across a number of the projects. We've mitigation in place for these. It would make the report huge if I covered all of that in it as well. But that's really it from me. Sorry, Emma-Jane, I rattled through it.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much. There's a lot of information in there, so thanks for that. It is here as an update for us to note. Councillor Bell.
Thank you. And this is such a huge report. It covers so many different areas. I know you can't get everything in, but there were a couple of things I wanted to tease out a wee bit, George, if that's all right. So around the prevention and early intervention aspect, I don't think we're doing ourselves any favours by the thumbnail sketches at times. Things like the investment in dementia services in the third sector and the impact they are having. And you'll know my next thought is around how we tie that into a much more strategic pathway, for example, for people with dementia that actually reduces the demand on statutory services further down the road, because I do think there's building up an evidence base for that. And also around the Gables, I am hugely concerned about the people in the Gables just now and where that's going. I wonder what the timescale is for a report coming to us about those options. I'd fed back to Fiona Rennie that our planners would be really open in Angus Council to a conversation around options on the existing site that might change the design and the cost, and potential other sites that might not be currently zoned for that kind of development. They would be very happy to have those conversations. So I'm hopeful that those might take place and that something tangible comes out of that, because people deserve a quality environment to live in. And it's run on for an awfully long time. So I'm quite anxious about that particularly. And I think anything else I can pick up in due course offline. Thanks.
Thanks. Sorry, I'm just looking. I'm not distracted, but I'm looking at my notes from a meeting we had about the Gables on the 16th of June, which is just a kind of layout of the next step. No, I asked actually Morgan to do a timeline. So she was tasked to go away and do that. And there was another meeting coming up on the 29th of the care home review. So we'll have more detail about timescales then, Julie.
And can we just, George, can you just make sure to provide some information as requested by Julie?
Will
that
do.
would be great.
Would
Thank
you want
you.
me to do a short briefing for members, Emma-Jane? Would that be better? Provide us a wee update.
I think that would be useful, yes.
Yeah, okay.
If you're providing that anyway for Julie, I think that'd be useful for us all to see. So thank you. Any other questions for George, Eunice? No? Okay, well, we're being asked to note the content of the report and the progress, and clearly there's a huge amount of work underway as always. So we're all happy to note the content of that report. Yep. Okay, Thanks very much. Okay, we've all been sitting for a while, so I'm going to propose that we take a short break, if that's okay. I know that we're a bit behind time. I know we spent, but understandably so, spent quite a bit of time on agenda items. So just whenever we come back, if those presenting reports can just obviously assume that we've all read what's in them and just to highlight the key points, and we'll hopefully manage to keep as close to time as possible. So it's just about, I think it's about 10 to 4 now. If we just come back a couple of minutes before 4 and we will restart then. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so welcome back to the Angus IJB. We're moving on in the agenda now to item 9, which is the finance report, and I'll hand over to Sandy for that.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll be relatively brief, hopefully. This is a year-end report, so really acting as a stock take or a formal report in terms of where we are and where we've been for 2021-22. As such, or at least partially because of that, there are no active recommendations in the report. The outline position for the whole of 21-22, I feel in terms of its general themes and the overall position, is relatively consistent with what we've said throughout the year, so that hopefully provides the board some reassurance. There has been some movement in the final position compared with some of our forecasts, but that often happens. Sometimes we have changes in things like our prescribing costs. That often moves, but we have got a lot of, still a lot of residual uncertainty in terms of how we report some of our COVID costs. But anyway, that's the gist of what we're setting out here. I think in terms of one of the main points from the report to note, I would highlight the very final paragraph of section 4, where we note that the information we report to the IJB throughout the year, and what this report is talking about, is really what I would call a management accounting position, but what you would all recognise as a management summary of where we are. Our formal financial accounts do show a slightly different, well, they actually show a very different position, because they allow for all the inflows and outflows of Scottish Government funding going in and out of our reserves. And there's reference in section 3.12, the COVID section, to £12 million of COVID funding that we received in February. And that's one of the differences between our management accounting position and what we formally see in our financial accounts. So that's just worth noting as a formal point. I'd like to just flag up 3 other things regarding our year-end position that are not in this paper, and they reflect Audit Committee business this morning. The Audit Committee received our annual internal auditors report, which is largely positive, a few action points that we'll follow up, but I think are all deliverable in the next few while. So that was largely positive. It agreed a draft annual governance statement, looking at a series of governance issues, many of which the board are familiar with. And it also agreed and supported the draft annual accounts, which will be passed on to our external auditors by the end of this month. So that's, I think, where we are in terms of the year end. I just would like to comment on the paper we saw early on about supported accommodation. Another difficult decision, as was noted during the discussion. And I think we all know we're taking those difficult decisions in the context of that very challenging strategic financial plan that we saw at our April meeting. So I think the comments about the kind of complexity of decisions we've already had to make in this calendar year, but that we will have to make going forward, including what we build into the strategic plan, are all valid comments and will provide us all with some challenges over the months to come. Chair, I'm happy to take any questions on the report. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Sandy. Questions? Andrew?
It's an apology. I've just recently undergone some major surgery, so I find it very uncomfortable to sit for any length of time. So I may get up and switch my camera off and wander about for a while. That should be over by the next meeting, but I just wanted to make people aware of strange behaviour that may be coming out of my camera. So thank you, Chair, for your patience.
No, thank you for letting us know, Andrew, and I hope you keep well. Any other questions or comments for Sandy? No? Okay, well, as Sandy noted at the start, the recommendations are that we note the overall financial position and the update on reserves and the issues documented regarding financial governance. So are we happy to note those? Yep. Okay, thank you very much, and thank you, Sandy. We'll move on now to item 10 in the agenda, which is the workforce plan, and I think we have Eunice for this one.
We do. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to bring this report today. This is the first report I'm bringing as a Head of Service at the Angus Health and Social Care Partnership. I'm delighted to present this report today. Today, from the IJB, we're looking for you to note the contents of this report and then approve it so that we can then go on and submit it to the Scottish Government as requested in July 2022. You'll see from the report and the attachment, the workforce plan and the workforce action plan, there's a significant amount of work that's been done in order to prepare this report. And I would want to give special thanks to Fiona Rennie, our principal officer, who's led on a lot of this work. And previously George Bowie was also lead on workforce before I came into post. So thank you both of them. You'll see in the report, the main aim of the report is to make sure that we have the right people with the right skills in the right place at the right time. And the report outlays some of the challenges we've got in the partnership around workforce, some of the risks, and then the action plan will help mitigate what we're going to do around these challenges and what the opportunities are. I'm happy to go through the report in more detail if you wish, but I'm mindful, Chair, that you'd asked for a brief resume, and I'm assuming people have read the report and action plan, so I don't know if it's easier for me to give questions at this point or if you want me to go into things in more detail.
I think probably would be best, as you say, Eunice, we've all had a chance to read through it, and maybe just for opportunity for members to ask some questions. Just one I had just to kick off. Thanks very much for the plan. It's clear a lot of work has gone into that. I just wondered what the engagement was with the other IJBs in terms of, you know, pan-Tayside approach to workforce issues. Can you talk a wee bit about that, or give us a bit more steer on how that works?
Of course, so I know there has been a liaison between the three health and social care partnerships, and we've been sharing our draft plans with each other and looking at what our commonality is and what we can do together. And interesting enough, I just got an email yesterday from one of our other heads of services in Dundee colleague who was asking about if we could do some further joint working around workforce data and how we can pull that down together, particularly from NHS Tayside, so we're not all having to ask for different information. So I think going forward, there's going to be quite a lot of opportunities to work together. We also are sitting on a workforce group that's led by NHS Tayside that also represents the three partnerships. So there'll be that opportunity as well in a more formal setting to work together in aspects of this plan.
Okay, that's great. Thanks for that. Catherine?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to everybody involved in bringing this report today. I was really pleased to see a number of the references actually to social work and social care workforce in particular. I was particularly pleased to see reference to the steps being taken around capacity for council officer functions and its linkage obviously to our ability to adequately provide care and support for those who need protection. I was also particularly interested in the development of posts at a level that would attract entry-level applicants to the social care workforce, including emphasis on young people, those who are looking for a career change or those who are looking to re-enter the workforce after a period away. And I think it's helpful for this meeting to highlight the significant opportunity that this presents to the public in Angus and more widely to join what is really a rewarding career for all involved, notwithstanding the challenges that there are on a day-to-day basis. There was one question, and I don't know, Eunice, whether or not you'll be able to provide any more information today, but on page 153, there is a diagram which interestingly points out the Council's workforce age banding data. And I think I'm right in my assumption that that is for the whole of the local authority workforce, rather than the workforce that's specific to the Business of Health and Social Care Partnership. And I understand that there may have been some difficulties in getting a further breakdown. And I guess it's just, you know, how you will be able to operate without more specific data is quite challenging, I think, because I'm fairly confident with my anecdotal information shared with me by George and others over a long period of time, that demographic looks quite different for the Health and Social Care Partnership workforce. For the social work and social care side of things. So it would be helpful if we can collectively perhaps push to see if we can get a more refined assessment of that element. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. Back on that.
Thank you, Catherine. I think your support on this would be helpful. I know there has been ongoing discussions with the Council regarding workforce data, how up to date it can be provided for the Health and Social Care Partnership. and the levels of breakdown. So any support you can provide on that is appreciated. But it has been ongoing that we have been trying to address that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Eunice, for this report. It's really in depth, and I like the way it kind of looks at the pipeline to allow us to recruit and retain and develop staff for longevity, I guess. But I wondered what sort of degree of flexibility the local systems have in terms of preventives to encourage various skill sets to come to work in our own areas where we know staffing is absolutely critical to how we deliver our services, how we recover from COVID, and how we play catch up with the rest of the services when our staff have been under such pressure over the last 2.5 years, and how we mitigate that impact. Thanks, Eunice.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I think that, and I think certainly within the independent sector and private sector, there has been some flexibility around looking at some additional golden handshakes and things like that for people coming in. I know there has been further discussions in that in some areas of the professions that we've got represented across the partnership. And I know there are some aspects of the professions in Scottish Government where they are looking at funding master's qualifications, for example, for physiotherapists, because there's a huge shortage of therapists nationally as well as locally. So there's various things that are being done across the sector, and I think we're certainly keen within the partnership that we do listen to exit interviews and take on board why people are leaving, so we can try and build on that, learn from that, and then sort of reinvest in our services in order to make sure that people stay, make sure that we have opportunities for people to have career pathways so that they can stay and they can develop within their career. And that's all sort of reflected in our action plan as we go forward, all the different aspects of how we'd want to encourage people to come and work in Angus Health and Social Care Partnership, but also to remain there and develop their careers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Sarah?
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Eunice, for your comprehensive report. Like Catherine, I was particularly pleased to see the nursing aspects demonstrated within the plan, and also attention being paid to the staff health and wellbeing agenda. And also one of my questions was going to be about the retention, but you very kindly covered that in your response to Councillor Bell, so thank you very much.
I maybe should have added at the start, sorry Chair, just in my introduction, that there has been a workforce steering group which is very well represented from all professions across the partnership, so that we do feed in all the different areas. We've also had quite an extensive engagement across the partnership about the strengths and challenges from the different aspects of the workforce, which has come together in the workforce plan and the action plan. So hopefully we've covered every area that we need to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gail?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Eunice, I just want to draw attention to a couple of areas there, and one is on page 147 for everybody, and it's about the additional staff that we now have in place. When you're hearing continually across the country about attrition rates and people leaving, actually if you compare 2020 whole-time equivalents, we've got an extra 98 staff in Angus that are NHS Tayside employed, and an extra 21 in Angus Council. So we are recruiting additional staff. I continually hear from the public that we're cutting staff and it's about money. That is actually not the case. And the other thing that Eunice and the team have helpfully included is the clear picture of the posts that we actually are having difficulty recruiting. So anything that IGB members can do to support us with that and encourage your friends and neighbours and their children. There's a whole list of the type of staff that we're needing, so we'd appreciate your help. And also what Eunice has flagged up in page 154 is the changes that we would hope to see by 2026. And this actually requires intake of breath here, an additional 975 staff in total. So huge challenges ahead for all of us with recruitment and the workforce plan. Eunice, thank you for including all the detail in the workforce plan, and I would commend all of you to read that, appreciating that we've got 79 pages or something like that for all of you, but a lot of detail in there that I think will really help all of you help us move forward.
Okay, thanks for that, Gail. I think that's very helpful. Is that Chris? Chris?
Yeah, sorry, just late into this one, just in response to what Gail had said, Emma Jane. I would just read one of the things that we've been working on with the partnership is Unison's Ethical Care Charter, and the development of some improved terms and conditions, particularly say that can try and build in around sick pay terms and conditions in the independent and private sector. If they're doable, will certainly go a long way to help in that recruitment crisis that you described. So there's a good piece of work going on between Unison Angus and the Health and Social Care Partnership through Pauline Reid, which I think I've told you about before. But I think the outcomes of that, if they're positive, will go a long way to solving that recruitment crisis that we've heard about. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Chris. I think that's helpful information to provide. Okay, if we've got no more questions, we'll just move to the recommendations for this paper, which are to note the content and to approve the Workforce Plan 2022-25. Are we all happy to do that? Yep. Okay, and thanks very much, Eunice, again. Okay, we move on in our agenda now. We're on agenda item 11, which is the Angus Mental Health and Wellbeing Living Life Well Improvement Plan. So I'll hand over to Jill for this one.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to bring at last our Living Life Well Improvement Plan specifically for Angus. It does feel like it's been a long time in coming, but we've got there. So what you've got before you is the draft improvement plan that we're looking for the IGB to approve today. A couple of things just to note. We did bring an update in the April meeting in relation to the engagement and consultation to support the development of this, and part of that reiterated the importance of hearing the voices of service users as part of that. And I can happily say that they have helped informed our final draft of this plan. We have aligned the priorities within the plan, obviously with Living Life Well, and supporting that is how it aligns with our strategic commissioning plan as well. As you know, we don't have a specific mental health strategic plan for Angus, which is slightly different to the other partnership areas. So we have aligned obviously ours with Living Life Well and our strategic commissioning plan. We will continue to monitor the progress in relation to the plan through our mental health strategic oversight group, and that will come hopefully in future via the strategic planning group reports and updates. And we are also in the process of developing an outcome measurement plan, because what we really want to be able to demonstrate is the so what difference have we actually made, and that will include both qualitative and quantitative measures. So we are just looking for IGB to note the progress to date in terms of the development of the plan and approve the plan itself. We have also included the opportunity to bring an update back to a further IGB so that we can give an update and assurance around our progress in relation to the actions. Happy to take any questions. I think Emma Jane's gone, Gail.
Oh, okay, I can't see her. We'll carry on. Julie, I don't know if you want to take over the chair here.
Well, I was going to ask if I could make a comment rather than a question, but suddenly I'm chairing until I'm just totally not prepared for this. So bear with me. Okay, does anyone? Oh, she's just coming back in.
Back in. She's just for a second. We probably need to give her a little bit of time to reconnect before we move on.
Okay, could I make my comment then?
Yeah, make your comment
while Emma Jane's coming back in. thanks for this report, Gillian. And I think, I mean, it's consistent, I guess, with care at home, in that it's showing that the more we can do at a community individual level in Angus, the better the outcomes for people, I think, and the more creative we can be in terms of delivering services that are patient-centred, are person-centred, and that's very much the sense of what I get when I hear you give those updates. So I'm really grateful to you for being able to pull that out and allow us to get a real sense of that. I think regular updates are really important on this, and also I guess a bit of reporting by exception. Where are the areas where you're coming across barriers, and what do you need us to do to address those in terms of directions, for example? And that's a really important part of I guess how we move forward. So thanks, and over to Emma Jane as well.
Thank you.
Apologies.
Julie. Emma Jane, if it's okay, sorry, I should have picked up, just there is a small typo in the report in the risk section. Again, thanks to Peter for spotting that one. 2 times 5 is actually 10, not 20. So the risk is moderate, although the scoring is high, but it is a moderate risk. So just to pick up on that, and just to acknowledge, I know Terry was hoping to be here today. Unfortunately, she's not been able to come, but Terry, Kat and Sally have all been instrumental in pulling this together and progressing the engagement work and getting the plan to a point where it meets our needs, but actually it meets the needs of the population within Angus as well. And that's really important to us, that we don't have a very lengthy improvement plan, which is very difficult for service users, carers, etc. to understand. So we were very keen that we wanted to have this in an understandable format that meant something to everybody across Angus.
Okay, thanks very much, and apologies, just completely crashed, and apologies for panicking you, Julie, as well. I'm back now. I may turn off my camera at some points. That seems to help the network quality, but it was a shame because I actually wanted to come in after you'd given your update, Gillian, just to say congratulations. It's so good to see this plan. Some of the things I really liked about it are that it's written in clear, plain English, that it says, what are we planning to do? What difference will this make? Which I think is absolutely key. What difference will it make? Excellent risk section, as always, as well. And I would just say, just for IGB members, just as an update, myself and Gail and Councillor Bell met with the Mental Health Oversight Group this morning, and they were very positive and complimentary about a lot of the work that's happening in Angus. They actually said a lot of what was happening is of national importance, as in, we're leaders in the field, including our work with the third sector partners as well. So I just wanted to highlight that to IJB members and really to commend you on the production of this plan. So thank you very much. And I'll bring in others now. Liam.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the report. I suppose it's just reflecting about the complexity of drawing up the sort of mental health strategy across Tayside and across the 3 IJBs, and just how that interface comes with small services, and just recognising the pressure under staffing, referencing our workforce report that we've seen, and that difficulty recruiting. And really just asking, is there a sort of strategic oversight group or forum between the 3 IJBs working with the tertiary and secondary care services, and really just probably assurance that there is some thought and recognises the risk of duplication and 3 ways of working that may be subtly different and maybe designed to local populations, but may cause duplication of work sometimes with secondary services. I come at this, as the AMD for CAMHS, recognising there's lots of really good work we're doing in Angus and trying to then spread it across the 3 areas, but just recognising sometimes that may cause a feeling of duplication. So it's just really looking for that assurance that there's some oversight and close professional working?
There is, Elaine, and I have to be honest, that close relationship and professional working is continuing to improve. I think we've saw that at our level since probably October last year. We've seen quite a significant improvement in that, more joined up working and closer working relationships. So there's two different forums, Elaine, that CAMS also play into. So there's the Integrated Leadership Group, which has representation from everybody that you have named there, and it also includes Police Scotland in that as well. And that's where we discuss a number of different areas. There's also the programme board for Living Life Well, which touches on the recommendations for Listen, Learn, Change as well. Sorry, there's just an aeroplane just gone over my house. So there's both of those different routes, Elaine. Where there's pieces of work where we need to take a regional approach, we absolutely do, and we coordinate it through those areas. And I have to be honest, CAM's input to those meetings is excellent, and there's actually a lot of learning from some of the work that CAMs have taken forward as well. So we do share learning, and we have a different Listen, Learn, Change leadership group every week, where we discuss a number of things and share learning experiences, etc. So please take assurance that that is in place.
Okay, thank you. And Catherine?
Thank you. So I wondered whether or not it was possible just to say a little more maybe about the lifelong aspect of the plan, and just how we're giving effect locally to the children and young people's aspect of the work, which is not quite as thoroughly evidenced in this particular plan. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. So to give a bit of assurance, Kirsty Lee has been involved, and she is a member of our strategic oversight group. We've had a number of discussions around how we include children and young people, but we acknowledge the amount of work that's already ongoing through the Children and Young People group to progress a lot of the work. So we're just in the process, Catherine, of joining some of that work up. We're very clear that we want to work together around this, and can take consideration into how we can work with education, etc., to support children and young people and their mental health. So we've got a group that Kirsty is going to support us with around progressing some of the work with children and young people. But what we didn't want to do was duplicate any of the actions that are already in the plan of the existing group and the work plan that they're progressing, but we needed to dovetail it in. So absolutely recognise that, and assurance that we are working with the team around supporting children and young people as well, and I extend that to families as well.
Thank you.
And Gail?
Yes, Jill, actually one of the areas the team did commend us on were the work that's going on with age 11 to 15-year-olds. That was one of the aspects that they did commend us on today. Just by way of reassurance for everybody else, you know, we may be a smaller part of the organisation, but we absolutely ensure that mental health is not treated as a Cinderella service. We've increased our oversight of these services, and our IGB, through yourselves, we've allocated much more resource to support the management, strategic planning and the engagement arrangements within our services here. And we absolutely take a whole system approach to ensuring that people with mental health needs are supported in our community with good third sector arrangements through our GP practices in conjunction with Penumbra and a number of other teams. Obviously, we've got the increasing the availability of the 7-day service, and the team did ask Jill for the evaluation of that. They're chasing that evaluation, but they were very, very positive about our aspirations and what we were doing. So very good news stories.
Okay, thanks for that, Gail. if we've got no other questions, we'll just move to the recommendations in the paper, which you will see, which includes supporting and improving the Living Life Well implementation plan in Angus, and also to request a progress report in December 2022. Are we all happy with the recommendations in the paper? Yep. Okay, thank you very much, and thanks very much, Jill.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on now to, sorry, I'm just scrolling through my papers. Item 12, which is the Clinical Care and Professional Governance Annual Assurance Report. And do we have Dr. Clement for this one?
Yes, I'm here.
You're here.
Thank you, Chair. I will keep it brief. This is a very long meeting, and sometimes clinical and care governance isn't the top of people's list for enjoyment. However, I can very confidently say that we have put a lot of effort into our clinical care and professional governance activities and are making progress. We continue to have monthly meetings that focus alternating between risk and also assurance, and with a wide membership of all our partnership services, including those services where we are the lead agency, so formerly hosted services such as the out of hours service and the Continence Nursing Service. We continue to carry out reviews of all our services and ensure that the focus is on continuous improvement and management systems. We also manage our partnership strategic risk and information governance through the CCPG, having a wider focus on risks as well. And we are ensuring that we are developing with the IGB a greater focus on risk management and risk appetite for the future. So we do focus on new development, sharing the learning and safe, effective, person-centred care, and also supporting the professional development of all our staff in these areas. So I'm assuming that you've read the paper and the range of activities. So the recommendations there are to note consistent moderate assurance from both acute services. So Angus IGB delegates the management of some of our service to acute. So we have the acute service and Angus Health and Social Care Partnership moderate assurance for clinical governance from the NHS Tayside Care Governance Committee. And also note the recommendation to support the continuation of the integrated approach and the wider business of the Clinical Care and Professional Governance Forum. I'd also note our recent internal audit, which asks for mid-year reporting from Clinical Care Professional Governance. So I would also be suggesting that in the future we have that mid-year report, which for us now would be December, to ensure that you're out the year on clinical care and professional governance activities and are receiving that assurance, and also we'll have the risk management there within that, as well as the agreed reporting on that. And also would like to highlight if there is any desire to have more knowledge around the clinical partnership group or other clinical forums, please let me know, because I'm a bit conscious that the IGB audit has suggested that the IGB cited on the clinical care and professional governance activities. So if you would like more information, then do please let me know. It is available. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Alison, and thanks very much for the report as well. You know, there's a great deal of assurance and information provided in that for IGB members. I'll open it up to questions now. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, and thank you, Alison. You're absolutely right. We in the audit committee at that time did see this as a really valuable piece of work and something that IGB in its entirety ought to be cited on. I was going to ask you, is there anything on that agenda that you think we would benefit from a more in-depth presentation, perhaps around whether it's a specific topic or the process, but something that you think would fire us up on this? Because I see there's little opportunity for us to delve into the meat of it, but I think there's a huge amount of work going on there, and it might be a good opportunity to also I guess share the culture that pervades throughout this kind of activity. It needs to be really open. People need to be willing to engage in that process and you know, make sure that it is a holistic approach. And I think it's a really good opportunity to demonstrate some really good practice that we have across the piece. And would you like to have that discussion with your colleagues? Thanks. It's great to see.
Okay, so that's putting me on the spot. I would say that if we listen to our internal auditors, they would be telling us that you need to know about the greatest risks. And that's probably the sort of areas that we have perhaps less assurance than what we would like. So I would say that being a lead agency for primary care, similar to P&K being a lead agency for mental health, there's risks associated with that. And there is a forthcoming sustainability of primary care audit. We're not able to share that yet, but that will be very worthwhile you being aware of that and seeing the work that we're hoping to do around clinical governance and assurance around our primary care. That is quite difficult in that primary care's most GPs are independent contractors, but we are putting a lot of work into our service, our 2C service, around complaints management, learning from adverse events, and looking at how we will progress that. So there's some learning from adult protection concerns. You know, that's adult protections managed by the Angus Adult Protection Committee, but linking that learning for primary care when it's an independent contractor status situation. I mean, we do that with the work around care homes. We've done it with prescribing, where we don't have direct line management control over the prescribers. We can do it as a different approach, and it's that integrated model of care that we've got there working together that's allowed us to develop that. So I would think that you would want to be cited on primary care in the future and recognise the lead agency role across Tayside, and some of the learning around mental health is applicable to how we approach primary care in the future.
Thanks, Alison. I think that links in really well to the conversation we were having this morning around the oversight discussions. So hopefully we'll be able to pick that up with Gail. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Elaine?
Just to say, I really welcome this report. I think it probably is something I had, maybe on first kind of joining the IJB, had perhaps realised, or perhaps I was maybe expected to see more detail that was there, and I'm just very conscious that the report came out of kind of very high level, and just being able to have this described, I think the table of the risks is really helpful, and I think that granular detail of what's being discussed is really helpful as an IJB member. It's almost it shows me what is being discussed. It takes away that unknown unknowns. I now know what's there. I feel much more assured about the risks that are there, and I think much more prepared, I think, for looking at those areas, and just that very graphic table of sustained areas of high level ongoing risk is really helpful for me, and also I suppose slightly unsettling in that, not unsettling, but probably is this focus where we need probably as an IJB to look and to work, and I think this really prepares perhaps some of those more focused bits of work to look at and areas, and perhaps makes it more obvious perhaps some of the IJB members that could help support that and that work. So really just in summary, thank you for the report. Recognises a huge amount of work done by the committee, but I think really informative, and I hope also for our communities it's very transparent about where that risk sits and what actually the IJB members are doing about it. So no, really thank you for this, and I think it's a real it really is a great progression for the IJB, so thank you.
Thanks, Elaine. Sarah?
Thank you very much, Chair and Alison, for your comprehensive, absolutely, as a member where clinical care and professional governance is very close to my heart, both professionally and as a registered nurse myself, so very assured by both the dedication and work of members of that committee. I'm just being a bit thoughtful about the opportunities that Councillor Bell asked to consider in terms of what might we offer to IJB members. And I just wonder, Alison, if there's something about the assurance mechanisms and having a bit more understanding around why we've chosen the measures that we've chosen and to what degree they give assurance or not. And what's made me think of that is tomorrow the National Chief Nursing Officers Directorate launch Excellence in Care, which is the care assurance platform to be used nationally around fundamental aspects of care delivered by registrants, obviously, which is only one component of how we give assurance. So there might just be something in there that we could discuss out with to see if that would be of interest to members. Thanks.
So thanks, Sarah. I agree, and I wonder if something around the health and social care standards would be helpful. The health and social care standards apply to all our services, whether it's health or social care, and the way that we have our assurance framework is taking into account all these relevant standards and regulations, and we ask that of all our services so that everybody is providing assurance on all the things that they should be. And also we have the 36-month cycle of Reflect, which is self-evaluation. So maybe some description around what Reflect is, and hopefully some of the early learning might be helpful for members as well to understand what we're asking services to do and how over the next 3 years we will have a comprehensive self-evaluation of all the health and social care standards within there. And if it's been difficult with COVID, but hopefully we'll to support priorities, and it's getting better all the time. And again, risk, and that would link in with the work that's planned around risk appetite for the IJB. Very happy to be involved in that.
Thanks very much. I think those are all very helpful suggestions, so thank you for those. Andrew.
Yeah, I think thank you, Chair. It's Alison just in the last breath there came out with this thing I was going to mention. What came out this morning is in the audit committee that we do welcome the 6 monthly reviews and reports and greater insight into what's called the robust conversations which go on to characterise various risks. It's not so much the numbers that come up and the values that are in the table, but more the kind of process that's been gone through by the Clinical Care Governance Risk Management Committee to arrive at these characterisations, and that's very important. But one of the key items that's missing is that in order to interpret more fully how these were reached, we do need a risk appetite definition for the IJB, and that is work in progress. It was identified quite early on. I think that would really add some icing onto the cake when you do bring a further more detailed presentation of how risk is managed, characterised, assessed, and worked through. And I do appreciate, and the audit committee appreciates the enormous amount of hard work that goes into this. Not always the most glamorous of items, but certainly an awfully important one when it comes to assurance. So thank you very much for all the work you do in your committee, Alison.
Thank you, that's very much appreciated, and I will take that back to the committee at our next meeting.
And I think we've got one more hand up. Is that Chris?
Yeah, it is, Jane. Thank you. I'm just noting on the report where it talks about complex delays and delayed discharges. Now, I'm a staff side rep and I'm not a healthcare professional, but I'm struggling with the comment that it says that community accommodation and support solutions and work is ongoing with Angus Council's procurement team with a view to commissioning an appropriate care home within Angus. Did we not just close down a care home last month with the closure of Beach Hill and the closure of care beds? So I don't understand how, on one hand, the board has agreed to close a council-run care home, but on the other hand, we're looking at procuring one. And had those beds still been available, that would have been, would it not? And, you know, if I'm wrong and I'm not understanding this correctly, then fair enough.
We'll check, but I'm pretty sure.
If there's all these delayed discharges and complex delays, then that Beach Hill would have solved some of those issues.
So that specific area of improvement relates to psychiatry for old age. I'd have to double check, but there is a specific need to meet the needs of people with complex needs within the psychiatry for old age wards. And so that would mean commissioning specialist input but within the community. And that comes from a government direction that we should be caring for people in the community and not in hospital, because we've got lovely environments within our psychiatry for old age wards, but they are still hospitals, and it's how we provide that in-depth expertise around dementia and other care for people with older adults with psychiatry nursing needs, but in the community is what's been looked at within that specific piece of work.
George, did you want to come in on that point as well? I'll just let George come in.
Probably, Chris, the easiest way to think about it is that particular group of patients or residents are in a tariff higher than the group that were being cared for in Beach Hill House. They're often folk that have been in care homes and then can no longer be looked after in care homes. So they're a different level of need, really. So.
Okay. And just to say, we do continue to have capacity in our care homes, and these patients who have additional needs, if they come into ordinary care home beds, the demands that they place on our community services, it makes it very difficult to meet their needs. So it's not a case of having people with complex needs go into, you know, the sort of regular types of care home beds. It would impact on the care that we're able to provide if we were to go ahead and do that.
Okay. Thanks very much for that. So if we've got no more questions for this one, you'll see the recommendations that are within the paper. Are we happy to support those recommendations? Yep. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Alison. Moving on now. So I'm conscious of time. I know we're on 4:45. So I know we've overrun slightly. So those that are presenting their papers, if we could just keep it to kind of short highlights and obviously assume that we have all read those papers. So we'll move to agenda item 13, which is the annual performance report. And Jill, I see you've popped up.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm happy not to go through the report, Chair, given the level of detail that's actually in the covering report and the dashboard itself. A couple of things just to pick up on in terms of previous actions from the February IJB, where we had agreed that we would review the target for personal care hours for individuals over 65. That has been completed, and that's reflected in the updated dashboard. In terms of our overall performance, I think what we're seeing in this one is, or it feels as though what we're seeing is more areas where we've seen a decline in performance. I think that's an ongoing outcome of the last 2 years and COVID and the significant challenges that we've had around that, albeit we are still performing in a number of areas. Just when Chris was speaking about the complex delays, you can see in terms of our performance around that, that we have had a decline in performance around that. And a lot of that in the early stages of 2021 was in relation to the courts being closed and not completing guardianship applications. So that is one of the contributing factors to that. One of the things just to raise for IJB's awareness, and something that we will look to change in future reports, that the emergency admissions and readmissions, as well as the complex delays and beds lost to delayed discharges, that includes a mix of both mental health and non-mental health. So what we're looking to do in future reports is to split them out, just so that we can be a bit clearer around both the physical healthcare side of things and the mental health pathways as well. Happy to take any questions, but as I say, we've kind of highlighted the key exceptions within the covering report with some explanation and narrative to support that. And also just to say thank you to Paul, who is new in post, who supported the development of that and has modernised the dashboard a bit since he came into post as well. So thank you, Paul.
Okay, thanks for that, Jill. Gail?
Yes, just to say that again, this morning's meeting, the questions arose regarding the IGB's role in setting the measures that are not the national measures. So it's just to say that, you know, in a future meeting, we're going to ask for more of your involvement about setting the measures and supporting us with that. So that'll be a new piece of work for the IGB that perhaps we haven't progressed as quickly as we could have due to the pandemic.
Okay, thanks, Gail. And Peter?
Thanks, Emma-Jane. Jill, if we go to page 237, the other measures, section 8, it says percentage of people who access SDS 1, 2, 3 and 4. What's the percentage of? Is it the total number of people accessing SDS? Right, okay.
Yes, it's a total number of people accessing SDS.
Right. Could we have that split down by carers and cared for?
Okay, we can look to see if that's possible. I'll pick that conversation up with Paul. And these are the measures that are included in the full annual report that's published on the partnership website. And again, just as a result of COVID, the full annual report isn't due to be published until the autumn this year.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Speed.
Yep, thank you. It was just a point of clarity, just picking up on what Gillian had said about the delayed discharge and over 75s and the complex care and some of the challenges around kind of supported accommodation in the community. And you mentioned that some of those cases were mental health related as well, and some weren't, and you were going to come back with kind of more information on that. Is that then perhaps because there's a change, there's a new kind of trend or pattern, or just
no? It's not a new trend or pattern, Councillor Speed. I think it's just we felt it was important that we have our own individual local data in terms of mental health, learning disability and physical health care delays in the system. So for us to look at any redesign or inform pieces of work that we would want to progress in terms of identifying priorities, we think it's really important just to have that broken down on the dashboard as well. So okay. It's not a change. It's not a significant change at all.
Yeah, I guess I was just thinking back, just picking up on Chris's points, but also in relation to Seaton Grove and the kind of the change in direction with regards to the mental health unit that was to be delivered there. So I just wondered if that was now something that was changing again, but no. Okay, thank you.
Okay, and Catherine?
Thank you. I'm looking at page 222, in particular, the reference to the percentage of people using ALC services treated within 3 weeks of referral, and just noting that that's quite a significant decline and has dropped below the target as well. And I'm just wondering, because it wasn't touched on in the cover report, if we're aware of what the reasons for that might be, and also whether or not there's an indication of how long people are actually waiting and if there's any improvement action being taken. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. So this is something that has been discussed at length within the team and through the ADP as well. I have to be honest, the numbers are very small. That has dropped our percentage below the target. However, that doesn't change what we would do in terms of supporting that. Over the last year or so, we have seen quite an increase in individuals being referred to the service for alcohol treatment specifically. So kind of consistent numbers around drugs, but we are seeing quite an increase in alcohol related referrals. What has been happening is as the referrals have been going in, and due to some of the delays to see them, by the time they're being seen by a specialist worker, they have had other support via their GP practice or other third sector organisations, and actually it's been a very short-term thing for them. A lot of it has been related to COVID, lack of employment, etc., and some financial challenges. So we're just in the process of looking at the waiting times themselves. The number of patients, as I say, is very small. That has dropped us under the target, just to see if there is any improvements that we need to make. The data only came, it was lastminute.com, Catherine, in terms of the availability of the data. That's why we weren't able to get much narrative into the report, but it is on the agenda as part of the performance framework for the ADP, and we do keep a tab on things and monitor progress there as well. I think some of the changes to the team will improve access in some of the pathways as well. So I don't foresee any ongoing significant challenges within the service. And if there is, then it's certainly something that we'll be taking quick action around to support individuals who need access to specialist support.
Thank you.
And Councillor Bell.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks again, Gillian, for this. The risk of being accused of channeling a recently retired Director of Public Health, I would always find it really helpful to see if we could calibrate our dashboard against poverty and areas of higher deprivation. For example, I just don't know how achievable that is with the system that we have, but I'd be very interested to know the answer to that. And also the impact of things like social prescribing and possibilities for focusing that in areas where our targets have maybe dipped, for example, around depression and anxiety, and that people who use alcohol or drugs perhaps, and use it as a guide to where we need to pay particular attention. Thank you.
I think that's an excellent point and very well made, Councillor Bell, and it's something that I'm sure Paul and I will scratch our heads over after the IJB. I think one of the things that we would like to do going ahead is how we link those outcomes to our strategic commissioning plan. So although we have them in terms of the priorities, we need to be a bit clearer on what measures relate to what actions within our strategic delivery plan. And I think that looking at the demographics and deprivation is an excellent idea, and something that we will have a think about and discuss with our public health colleagues and the analysts around that as well. And I know that the analyst that we get support from the ADP, Russell as well, will be able to give us some support around that level of information too, hopefully. So happy to explore that.
Thank you. And could I just come in there? There would be, I think, support from Public Health Scotland to help you to do that. And I know Russell's got good working relationships there as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody for your questions. If we move to the recommendations in the paper, you'll see them as laid out. Are we all happy with those recommendations? Yep. Okay. Thanks very much, and thanks again, Gillian.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to item 14, which is our prescribing management paper. Who's taking this one, Gail?
Alison, are you able to take this? I don't know who's on.
Well, Michelle was there until recently. I might let her.
Dropped off. I couldn't see her. Oh, are you there, Michelle?
I am. I'm here. Yeah.
Well done.
I mean, I'm happy. I'm happy not to go through it because I'm cognizant of the time. And just if anybody has any questions or any areas they want to draw attention to, and I'll do the best I can to answer you. Or I can go through it if that's what you would prefer.
I'll go with questions if that's okay. Does anybody have any questions for Michelle? No? Okay, well, you'll see the recommendations are to note the content of the paper, and also that we will receive a further update in December. So are we all happy with those recommendations? Yep. Okay. Thank you.
I suggest, Chair, we'll move that further up the agenda in our December meeting.
Good idea, yes. Okay, and we'll move on to agenda item 15 now, which is the NHS Tayside Health and Social Care Digital Strategy. I don't know if we have, do we have Lake? No.
He was going to join, and Angela Murphy. They were both going to join.
They are in the meeting. They're both in the meeting.
Okay, well, welcome to you both. We are running a wee bit over time, but thank you very much for this paper, and really to acknowledge the significance of having this document and the amount of hard work by you and your team to get to this point. We've all had an opportunity to read through the strategy. If there's anything in particular you want to highlight, or if you're happy to take questions from members.
I'm happy to take questions, Chair.
Okay. Hello, I didn't see
Hi.
there. Hi. Do we have questions? I see a hand up. I'll just check who it is.
I should probably introduce myself. Actually, my name's Lake.
That's a good idea.
Yes. I'm Lake Leek, and I am the Director of Digital Technology for NHS Tayside. So happy to take any questions on the digital strategy.
Okay, so I see Peter. Peter, have you got a question?
Yeah, thanks, Emma Jane. Thanks for this, Lake. This is a brilliant report. What I was wondering was, some years ago, Angus Council published their digital strategy, and I wondered how you were going to blend those to ensure that it's seamless in terms of passing information and sharing information.
Thanks for that, Peter. Technology moves very quickly, and there are new and emerging technologies that we're looking to apply to new patient pathways all the time. Some of those initiatives are national initiatives driven by the Scottish Government, but we are keen to ensure that any new initiatives do have that exposure across local authorities and the IJBs. Within the genesis of this digital strategy, we were keen to ensure that we did have those engagement points, and IJBs were invited to stakeholder groups and played a significant part in shaping the digital strategy. It's a 5-year digital strategy, and each year will generate a new program of work where there are those direct interfaces with social care. We will be looking to engage very closely, and I think probably our priority for this year is to make sure that we have a fit for purpose system so that people within social care and the IJBs can access the clinical information that they need appropriately, and also they can input into those systems, and that information is then visible in acute systems. So we're working very hard to procure a new system that will replace hopefully our existing system, which is EMIS Web, which has it's quite an old system, and the functionality simply isn't there for our present day needs. So that's a piece of work going on, but we are very aligned with other strategies.
Thank you. And Councillor Bell?
Thank you, Lake. It's nice to meet you and to see Angela again after some time. I think it's great to see great aspirations in this strategy, and I know there are some funding gaps perhaps in terms of delivery, and I just wondered how realistic you see it being in terms of delivery.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I think in terms of being realistic about some of these programs of work, they are very much aligned to national programs of digital work, and where they are big national programs of work, they will be funded by the Scottish Government. So the Scottish Government has just refreshed their digital strategy for health and social care. This strategy very much tracks the key ambitions within the national strategy, so that we then have access to those very important funding channels. The second point is, yes, the whole of the NHS in Scotland is under quite straitened circumstances when it comes to finance. I think it's important to look beyond the next year and to take a slightly longer view of investing in new clinical pathways that are more efficient and that will deliver a higher quality of patient care. And with that in mind, we want to make sure that every program of work, that every new piece of work has a very robust business case with a very strong argument in terms of a return on the investment that our organisation makes. And if we can ensure that there is that robust business case, then we're much more likely to get funding. And just to give you an example, one of the programs that we are looking at is to digitize appointment letters for our patients. Now, a stamp on average will cost around about 90p. And as you can imagine, that's a considerable outlay for our organisation. And if we can introduce an electronic system, much like a banking system, where you log into a secure site and you're able to download your letters that sends you automated appointment reminders, we can cut down on something that we call DNAs, which is people who simply forget to attend their appointments or don't attend their appointments for various reasons, and we can save on the postage. So it's really about having that very strong case for making financial savings, but that's not our main driver. It's to increase the quality of patient care.
Thank you. And Gail?
It was really, Chair, to bring in Angela, because Angela takes the lead on behalf of the Health and Social Care Partnership with this. Angela, could you maybe just outline our plans there? I know we've included in the report the Angus current position as well.
Thanks for that, Gail. So just a brief introduction to myself. I'm Angela Murphy, Allied Health Professional Lead in Angus. And as Gail has said, I've taken on a portfolio of leadership for digital in Angus. And I also do this for AHPs and Tayside. So, you know, relating to the previous question as well about aligning both Angus Council and NHS Tayside strategies. One of the things that we are doing is we've got a new group developed. We're just currently working on the terms of reference that will have members from both Angus Council and NHS Tayside, as well as the services within the Health and Social Care Partnership, so that we can share what digital developments that we are working on, and wherever possible work on these together, and to look that whatever developments we are doing do align with each other rather than go off in opposite directions. And certainly the recent NHS Tayside strategy very much fits in with the direction that we are already going within the partnership. But I think it is important that we kind of close that loop and make that connection locally between the two partner organisations of NHS Tayside and Angus Council, and make sure that we set up a communication link to the NHS Tayside Digital Partnership, which already links in all different parts of NHS Tayside, including the 3 health and social care partnerships. So very much aligned in with that. And we've been fortunate funding-wise, Councillor Bell, to have taken cognizance of one of our greatest needs is having mobile devices for our community staff. Community nursing have had access to an electronic patient record for some years now. Lake mentioned it, EMIS. However, it's not been available as a mobile device, which has meant the staff having to return to base all of the time to try and make recording, and it has meant a continuation actually of a paper system in addition to the electronic system. So as we move to the new system, which hopefully will be next year at some point, we have looked at the recent Scottish Government funding, and we will be looking to purchase mobile devices in order to be able to get staff out and about and able to access patients' information, all the different systems, and we will make sure that the new system, we've been assured that the new system will actually work on these type of devices. They're also able to be worked on offline. So if we can't get Wi-Fi, if we can't get 4G, we don't have 5G yet, but hopefully at some point, as soon as we get back into an area, we can synchronise and we can still record everything we need to. And when we get back into an area with reception, it will all then update and keep the system live. And that's going to have massive benefits for our community staff. So in addition to community nurses, that will also be for our community AHPs as well. So lots and lots going on, and good news, and a plan for things to be an awful lot better than they have been.
That's great. Thanks very much for that, Angela. Catherine?
Thank you. I really welcome this strategy, which I do interest in as an NHS Tayside strategy rather than a joint strategy, given that it is about health and social care. But I'm quite interested in the interface that's envisaged between those two systems, really the health system that it looks to me like you're looking to replace, but how it integrates and how it interfaces with the social work and social care client index systems that are in operation across Tayside. I don't think it's probably the place to get into the detail of that, but I suppose I am keen to hear from Angela that there will be an Angus specific group around this theme, and it will include a wider range of colleagues and those who are just operationally involved in the delivery of adult health and social care in Angus at the moment. It's going to be very important fairly early on to have explicit conversations around data protection and privacy aspects here, because these would be probably the most significant barriers potentially organisationally to progressing something that's different than that which we already have, although I'm conscious that we do already work across different systems in pockets across each of the services. So really exciting time to be looking at this and developing it. And obviously this is also the direction of travel in terms of the bill that's just been published for health and social care reform more widely. So I think this is definitely a step towards the future. Thank you.
Thanks, Catherine. That's really helpful. And last question goes to Alison.
So my question is around implementation and time frame, because you've mentioned a very important aspect in terms of the mobile technology. This links really, really closely with our big risks, the sustainability of primary care, our workforce, and when you think of our strategic planning priorities around urgent care, the ability to have mobile technologies for workers that might not be fully qualified nurses to then seek the advice of people working back at base, if you like. This is going to be incredibly important that we progress this, and the way that our workforce is, with a degree of urgency around the urgent care aspects. So I just wondered the time frame for seeing that plan and making sure we're tracking these actions in the working group that Catherine's proposing around the Angus focus. Where's the plans? How's that going to be tracked from an Angus perspective, linking into Tayside and linking in with the council? I'm just looking for a wee bit more detail around that, please.
I shall come in with that if that's okay, Lake. The new group, we are aiming to have our first meeting in July of this year, Alison, and we have proposed as well in the paper today that I do come back with more detail about how we're taking things forward in Angus in the December IGB meeting. So anything that I say just now really is what my thoughts are rather than a collective thought. So I wouldn't want to elaborate on that too much. I mean, all I can say is that the current system, EMIS, which is the community system used by mental health and community nursing, is contract, I think, finishes February next year. That may have to be extended depending on timeframes of getting the new system up and running. But I don't foresee that that's meant to be for a long period. And as far as getting mobile devices, we've got a lot of information gathering with that, because it's not just let's purchase a load of iPads or anything like that. It's got to be appropriate. It's got to be something that will work and something that can be supported by NHS Tayside and Angus Council for our council colleagues. And there's obviously a lot to think about with different licenses. We've got a lot of desktops that we maybe will no longer need. So it's a wee bit in depth. So it's not that easy to come and get it sorted very quickly. Plus, it will take a bit of time to get new laptops or tablets or whatever we go ahead with up and running, which will need support from NHS Tayside, but we're very much linked in with them for taking that forward. But I would envisage that by the end of this year, we will certainly have started mobile devices being used by community staff with the old system, with EMIS as it is just now, until we move on to the new system. So as soon as we can, Alison, is probably the vague answer.
Okay, thanks very much for that. Thanks very much to Lake and Angela for coming along and speaking to us today. Great to see this document. You'll see the recommendations in the paper to acknowledge the publication of the strategy, to consider the themes, and to note that the Angus Digital Transformation Group will provide an update to the IGB in December. Are we all happy with those recommendations? Yep. Okay, well, thanks very much, Lake and Angela.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we move to item 16 now, which is the date of the next meeting, which is Wednesday, the 24th of August at 2 o'clock. So that's officially the end of our meeting. Thank you to everybody for your contributions. Could IJB members just stay on for 2 extra minutes as the broadcast is turned off, if that's okay? Yeah.